Welcome back to Benton Otis. If you enjoy Alien Twist, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's begin the story.
What if Ben 10 was in Bleach Universe Chapter 1, Alien Among Spirits? Come on, come on. Ben Tennyson slammed his palm against the Omnitrix, diving behind a dumpster as a blast of purple energy scorched the pavement where he'd been standing. At 17, he'd gotten pretty good at the whole hero thing, but tonight was testing his limits. The alien, some kind of interdimensional being that called itself Rift Shifter, hovered 20 feet above the Bellwood shopping district, its translucent body rippling with cosmic energy. Four spindly arms manipulated what looked like tears in the fabric of reality. "What's wrong, human?" the creature taunted, its voice echoing like it was speaking from multiple places at once. "Afraid to face me without your transformations?" "Nah, just giving you a sporting chance," Ben called back, still frantically working the Omnitrix dial. "But since you're being so annoying about it," the watch finally flashed green, and Ben slammed it down with practiced precision. Heat blast. The familiar rush of transformation washed over him as his skin hardened into volcanic rock crisscrossed with magma veins. "Now we're talking." Ben launched himself from behind the dumpster on a jet of flame, hurling fireballs at the dimensional intruder. Two connected, causing Rift Shifter to shriek and bob erratically in the air. "Insignificant creature. You have no idea what forces you're playing with." The alien's body pulsed with energy as it tore open a larger rift in the air. "I traverse dimensions for breakfast." "Yeah. Well, I kick alien but for dinner." Ben rocketed upward, closing the distance between them. "And it's definitely dinner time." He tackled Rift Shifter mid-air, the alien's surprisingly solid form struggling against his fiery grip. They tumbled through the night sky, Ben trying to maintain his hold while avoiding the creature's weird portal-creating fingers. "Let go, you fool." Rift Shifter's body began to glow brighter. "The dimensional energies are destabilizing. Should have thought of that before you started tearing holes in my town." Ben increased the intensity of his flames, hoping to force the alien to submit. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest suddenly began to pulse and beep erratically. "What the?" Ben glanced down, momentarily distracted. Rift Shifter seized the opportunity, slamming all four hands against Ben's chest directly onto the Omnitrix symbol. "You want to see other dimensions so badly? Then go." The Omnitrix sparked violently, green energy arcing between it and the alien's hands. The dimensional rift behind them expanded rapidly, edges fluctuating wildly. "No, stop. What are you doing?" Ben tried to break free, but the alien had him in a death grip. "The Omnitrix, such interesting technology," Rift Shifter hissed, its voice distorting. "Let's see how it handles a little interdimensional travel." The rift behind them pulsed, expanding to engulf them both. Ben felt himself being pulled backward, the alien suddenly releasing him with a laugh. "Enjoy your trip, Ben Tennyson." "Wait." Ben reached out, but the rift's energy wrapped around him like tendrils, yanking him into swirling darkness. The last thing he saw was Rift Shifter floating away, making a mocking salute as the portal collapsed behind him. Ben tumbled through a chaotic vortex of light and color, the Omnitrix sparking and glitching against his chest. He tried to maintain his heat blast form, but the transformation flickered unstably. "Come on, don't fail me now," he shouted, though his voice seemed to be swallowed by the void around him. The Omnitrix gave one final violent surge, a burst of green energy enveloping him completely before everything went black. "Ugh!" Ben groaned, blinking as consciousness slowly returned. His head throbbed, and every muscle in his body ached like he'd gone 10 rounds with Vilgax. The familiar weight of the Omnitrix on his wrist was still there, but something felt off about it. He pushed himself up, realizing he was sprawled in an alleyway. It was night, with distant streetlights casting long shadows. Definitely not where he'd been fighting Rift Shifter. Great. Just great. Ben examined the Omnitrix. The familiar green glow seemed dimmer, and the faceplate had a hairline crack running across it. When he tried to activate it, the holographic selector flickered weakly before dying out. Perfect timing for a malfunction. He staggered to his feet and made his way to the alley entrance. The street beyond was unfamiliar, definitely not Bellwood. Signs in Japanese lined the storefronts, and the architecture had a distinctly different style. Japan? Seriously? Ben ran a hand through his hair. That's one heck of a dimensional jump. A woman walked past, and Ben called out, "Excuse me. Can you tell me where I am?" She continued walking without acknowledging him at all. "Hey." Ben jogged up beside her. "I just need some help." The woman walked straight through him. Ben froze, staring at his hands in shock. "What the?" He spun around, watching the woman continue down the street without the slightest indication she'd noticed anything strange. "Am I a ghost?" He reached out to touch a nearby vending machine. His hand connected solidly with the metal surface. Okay, not a ghost. But definitely not normal. Ben looked around, increasingly confused. A street sign caught his eye, Karakura Town. "Never heard of it," he muttered. "And why can't people see me?" The Omnitrix suddenly sparked, causing Ben to yelp in surprise. For a split second, a bizarre overlay appeared in his vision, energy signatures and strange auras around certain objects and areas. Then it vanished as quickly as it had come. That was weird. Ben tapped the watch face. "What's going on with you?" A blood-curdling scream cut through the night. Ben's head snapped up, hero instincts kicking in. Down the street, people were running in panic, though from what, he couldn't see. Then the Omnitrix sparked again, and suddenly, Ben could see it. A massive, grotesque creature loomed in the middle of the street. It stood at least 15 feet tall, with a body like a twisted gorilla, bone-white mask covering its face, and a gaping hole straight through its chest. Most disturbing was the way people ran around it rather than away from it, as if they couldn't see the monster at all. "What the heck is that thing?" Ben breathed, instinctively backing up. The creature's mask face turned toward him, empty eye sockets somehow focusing directly on Ben. "You can see me," it growled, voice distorted and hollow. "And your soul, it smells different. Powerful." The monster took a thundering step toward him. Ben desperately worked the Omnitrix, slapping and twisting it. "Come on, work. This would be a really good time for you to start working." The creature lunged forward with surprising speed. Ben dove aside, rolling across the pavement as massive fists cratered the spot where he'd been standing. "I need to transform, now." Ben slammed his palm against the watch face repeatedly. The monster laughed, a chilling, empty sound. "Your soul will be delicious. So much more substantial than the usual fare." It swiped at Ben again. He ducked under the attack and sprinted down the street, mind racing. No one else could see this thing, but it could definitely affect the physical world. Its footsteps cracked the pavement, and its attacks left visible damage. The Omnitrix continued to sputter and spark. Ben took cover behind a parked car, frantically working the device. "I don't know what you are," he called to the creature, "but I've taken down things way uglier than you." "A brave little soul," the monster replied, stalking closer. "Those are always the tastiest." The creature reached for the car Ben was hiding behind. Before it could grab the vehicle, a flash of black suddenly intercepted the monster's arm, followed by the sound of steel cutting through flesh. The creature roared in pain, recoiling as its arm flew through the air, dissolving into black particles. Standing between Ben and the monster was a teenager with bright orange hair, dressed in a black robe and wielding a sword nearly as tall as himself. His back was to Ben, but his stance radiated confidence. "Another hollow causing trouble?" The orange-haired teen held his massive blade with casual ease. "Don't you guys ever take a night off?" The monster, apparently called a hollow, snarled in rage. "Soul Reaper. You'll pay for that." Yeah. I've heard it all before." The teen readied his sword. Let's make this quick. I have homework. Ben watched in fascination as the Soul Reaper engaged the hollow with incredible speed, leaping impossible distances and swinging his massive sword like it weighed nothing. The monster fought back with its remaining arm and snapping jaws but couldn't match the teen's agility. The Omnitrix suddenly hummed against Ben's wrist, the familiar green glow returning stronger than before. Ben glanced down to see the device pulsing rhythmically, something about its energy feeling different, more vibrant somehow. Now you decide to work. Ben muttered. Better late than never. He twisted the dial, cycling through his available aliens. The holographic display flickered strangely, the alien silhouettes overlaid with unfamiliar energy patterns. Deciding to take his chances, Ben selected one and slammed down the faceplate. Big chill. The transformation felt different, a strange energy coursed through him alongside the familiar DNA reconfiguration. As the blue moth-like alien form materialized, Ben felt an unusual connection to the air around him, as if he could sense spiritual currents he'd never noticed before. Whoa, he breathed, his voice carrying the usual ghostly echo. This feels different. The Soul Reaper spun around at the sound of Ben's transformation, eyes widening in shock. What the? The distraction cost him. The hollow seized the opportunity to land a powerful blow, sending the orange-haired teen flying into a nearby wall. Pay attention, Soul Reaper, the creature cackled. Hey ugly. Ben called out, floating upward. Why don't you pick on someone your own size? The hollow turned toward him, confusion evident even in its mask face. What are you? Not a Soul Reaper, not a hollow, not a human. I'm the guy who's about to freeze your face off. Ben inhaled deeply, then expelled a blast of freezing vapor at the creature. The ice that formed wasn't the usual crystalline blue but had strange, glowing patterns running through it. The hollow shrieked as the frost crept up its legs, immobilizing it. The Soul Reaper had recovered, staring at Ben with undisguised shock. What are you? Right now? Big chill. Generally. Just a guy who can turn into aliens. Ben phased through a lamp post to demonstrate. And you are? Ichigo Kurosaki. The teen shook his head as if to clear it. But we can do introductions later. That ice won't hold a hollow this size for long. As if on cue, the creature began breaking through the strange ice, cracks spreading across its frozen limbs. Right. Teamwork? Ben suggested. Ichigo nodded curtly. I'll take the kill shot. Can you distract it? Distraction is my specialty. Ben flew toward the hollow, circling its head while going intangible. Hey mask face. Bet you can't catch me. The hollow roared in frustration, swiping at Ben as he phased in and out of tangibility. Meanwhile, Ichigo positioned himself behind the creature, sword raised. Now. Ben called, diving directly through the hollow's chest, disorienting it further. Ichigo leaped, bringing his massive blade down in a perfect arc through the hollow's mask. The creature let out a final scream before dissolving into black particles that faded away. Ben landed beside Ichigo, the Omnitrix symbol on his chest blinking rapidly. That was some serious sword work. So, you do this often? Ichigo pointed his blade at Ben. What are you? You're not a normal spirit, and definitely not a Soul Reaper. Like I said, the Omnitrix suddenly timed out with a beep, reverting Ben to human form in a flash of green light. Just a guy with a very special watch. Ichigo took a step back, sword still raised. You were human all along. Technically, I'm still human. Just one who can transform into different aliens. Ben held up his wrist, showcasing the Omnitrix. This device lets me do that. Name's Ben Tennyson, by the way. You can see spirits, Ichigo stated, not lowering his sword. And you can see me in my Soul Reaper form. That's not normal for a human. Ben shrugged. Normal left the building a long time ago for me. And for the record, I couldn't see that hollow thing until my watch went haywire. Ichigo studied him intently before slowly lowering his sword. This is weird, even by my standards. That's saying something, considering you run around in a bathrobe fighting monsters with a sword the size of a door, Ben quipped. It's a shihakusho, not a bathrobe. Ichigo scowled, then his expression shifted to confusion. Wait, you said your watch went haywire. When? When I got sent here through some kind of dimensional portal, Ben explained. I was fighting an alien that could create rifts between dimensions, and I ended up here in, what was it? Karakura Town. Ichigo's eyes widened. Dimensional travel? That's fascinating, came a female voice from behind them. Ben turned to see a short girl with black hair, also wearing the same black outfit as Ichigo. She approached them cautiously, her hand resting on a sword at her side. Rukia, Ichigo acknowledged her. You felt it too? She nodded, her eyes fixed on Ben. The spiritual disturbance was impossible to miss. Then it changed, into something I've never sensed before. Her gaze dropped to the Omnitrix. And it's coming from that device. Ben instinctively covered the watch with his other hand. It's called the Omnitrix. And it's not dangerous, usually. It's interfacing with spiritual energy, Rukia said, moving closer to examine it. I can feel it drawing in Ryatsu. Ryatsu? Ben repeated. Is that what let me see that hollow thing? Rukia exchanged a look with Ichigo. He doesn't know anything about Soul Society or hollows. Apparently he's from another dimension, Ichigo said with a shrug. Showed up here by accident. Great, more weird stuff, Rukia muttered. She turned back to Ben. We need to take him to Urahara. This is beyond either of us. Who's Urahara? Ben asked. Someone who might be able to help you, Ichigo answered. And figure out what your watch is doing with spiritual energy. Ben considered his options. He was stuck in an unfamiliar dimension with a malfunctioning Omnitrix, no friends, and apparently invisible to most people. These two could see him and seemed to know what was going on. Lead the way, he decided. But just so you know, if this is some kind of trap, I've got more than one alien that can get me out of trouble. Rukia actually smiled at that. If we wanted to hurt you, we wouldn't bother with an elaborate trap. Fair point. Ben fell in step beside them. So, while we're walking, what exactly is a Soul Reaper? And what was that hollow thing? Soul Reapers are guardians who help spirits pass on to the afterlife and purify hollows, Rukia explained. Hollows are corrupted spirits who lost their hearts and prey on other souls. And you fight them with those swords? They're called Zanpakuto, Ichigo said. They're special. Hard to explain. Says the guy talking to someone who turns into aliens, Ben pointed out. That earned a genuine laugh from Ichigo. Fair enough. As they walked, Ben noticed more spirits, regular human-looking ghosts with chains hanging from their chests, watching them pass. None of the living people on the street seemed to notice anything unusual. So most people can't see any of this? Ben asked. Correct, Rukia confirmed. Only those with spiritual awareness can perceive spirits, hollows, and soul reapers. Most humans go their entire lives without seeing any of it. Lucky me, Ben muttered. They arrived at a modest-looking shop with a sign reading, Urahara Store. Despite the late hour, lights shone from within. This is it? Ben asked skeptically. Looks like a corner store. Appearances can be deceiving, Rukia said cryptically, sliding open the door. Inside, the shop appeared to sell various candies and household items, though Ben noticed strange symbols on some of the packaging. A large man with glasses and an apron looked up from sweeping the floor. Ah, Kurosaki-san, Kuchiki-san. The boss is expecting you. He glanced at Ben with obvious curiosity. And you've brought the source of the disturbance. Is that what I am now? A disturbance? Ben sighed. The most interesting kind, came a cheerful voice from the back room. A man in a green and white striped hat and wooden sandals emerged, lazily fanning himself despite the cool evening. I felt your arrival from quite a distance, young man. This is Kisuke Urahara, Rukia introduced them. Former Soul Reaper and scientist. The former and the pause before scientist don't inspire confidence, Ben noted. Urahara laughed behind his fan. Smart boy. Please, come to the back. I believe we have much to discuss. The back room was sparsely furnished with cushions around a low table. Urahara gestured for everyone to sit, while a young girl with black pigtails silently served tea. Now then, Urahara said once they were settled, his jovial demeanor shifting to something more serious. Why don't you tell me how you came to be here, Ben Tennyson, and about that fascinating device on your wrist? Ben raised an eyebrow. I never told you my name. Your arrival created quite the spiritual disruption. I make it my business to gather information quickly. Urahara snapped his fan closed. Especially when it concerns powerful unknown entities appearing in my town. Ben hesitated, then decided that honesty was his best option. He explained about the Omnitrix, his fight with Rift Shifter, and how he'd been pulled through a dimensional portal. Urahara listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about the Omnitrix's function and origins. Fascinating, Urahara murmured when Ben finished. A device that rewrites DNA to transform its user into different species. And now it appears to be adapting to our world's spiritual energy. Can you fix it? Ben asked. And maybe help me get home? Perhaps. Urahara extended a hand. May I examine it more closely? Ben reluctantly held out his arm. Just don't try to remove it. It doesn't come off, and it reacts badly to tampering. Duly noted. Urahara produced several strange instruments from his sleeves and began scanning the Omnitrix. Extraordinary technology. It's already begun incorporating Ryatsu into its energy matrix. Is that dangerous? Ichigo asked. For the device? No. For our friend here. Urahara glanced up at Ben. It's changing you, on a fundamental level. Allowing you to interact with the spiritual realm. That doesn't sound great, Ben said uneasily. On the contrary, it may be saving your life. Urahara sat back. You see, as a being from another dimension, your soul isn't naturally attuned to our reality. You might have simply faded away, without an anchor. And the Omnitrix is acting as that anchor? Rukia surmised. Precisely. Urahara nodded approvingly. It's adapting both itself and its wearer to survive in this dimensional plane. The Omnitrix suddenly beeped loudly, the faceplate glowing brighter. Ben felt a strange surge of energy through his body. Ah, it seems to be completing another adaptation cycle, Urahara observed with scientific excitement. How do you feel, Ben? Weird, Ben admitted. Like I can sense everything around us. More than before. Your spiritual awareness is increasing, Rukia explained. You're becoming more attuned to the flow of Ryatsu. The Omnitrix's glow subsided, but Ben could still feel the new awareness Rukia mentioned, a heightened perception of the spiritual energy around him. So, about getting home. Ben redirected the conversation. Urahara's expression grew more serious. Interdimensional travel is extremely rare and dangerous. The fact that you survived it intact is remarkable. Creating a stable pathway back to your dimension will require significant research and preparation. How long are we talking? Weeks, at minimum. Possibly months. Ben's heart sank. Great. My parents and Gwen are going to freak out. Time may flow differently between dimensions, Urahara offered. What seems like months here might be mere hours there. Or vice versa, Ben muttered. In the meantime, Urahara continued, you'll need a safe place to stay. And perhaps some training to control your new spiritual abilities. He can stay with me, Ichigo unexpectedly volunteered. When everyone looked at him in surprise, he shrugged. My dad won't notice another person around the house, trust me. Excellent. Urahara clapped his hands. And I can continue studying the Omnitrix as adaptation to our world's spiritual energy. While helping me get home, Ben emphasized. Of course, of course. Urahara waved his fan dismissively. But in the meantime, why not make the best of your situation? After all, how often does one get to experience an entirely different universe? Before Ben could respond, a heavy spiritual pressure suddenly descended on the shop. Rukia and Ichigo immediately tensed, hands moving to their swords. Multiple hollows, Rukia said, eyes narrowing. A lot of them, converging nearby. That's unusual, Urahara remarked, all traces of humor gone from his voice. They're coming this way, Ichigo added, rising to his feet. Like they're drawn to something. All eyes turned to Ben. The Omnitrix as spiritual energy, Urahara theorized. It's like a beacon to them. Great, so now I'm hollow bait. Ben stood up, checking the Omnitrix. The faceplate was glowing steadily, fully charged. Well, at least the watch is working again. You should stay here, Rukia told him. We'll handle the hollows. No way. Ben twisted the dial, cycling through his aliens. I don't sit on the sidelines when there's hero work to be done. Besides, it sounds like I'm partly responsible for this. Ichigo grinned. I like your attitude. Just don't get in my way. Boys, Urahara chided, there are plenty of hollows to go around. They rushed outside to find the night sky tearing open in multiple places, black rifts appearing with white masked faces peering through. Ben counted at least a dozen hollows of various sizes emerging onto the street. Ready for this? Ichigo asked, drawing his massive sword. Please, Ben scoffed, selecting an alien on the Omnitrix. I do this kind of thing before breakfast. He slammed down the watch face, and energy engulfed him. The transformation felt stronger, more vibrant than before, the alien DNA now enhanced by spiritual energy. Diamond Head. Ben's body crystallized into the familiar Petrosapien form, but with a new twist, faint blue energy lines pulsed through his diamond body, following patterns similar to the spirit energy he'd seen earlier. Impressive, Rukia commented, drawing her own sword, much smaller than Ichigo's but elegant in design. You ain't seen nothing yet. Ben formed his arm into a crystalline blade and charged at the nearest hollow. The battle exploded across the street. Ichigo moved with incredible speed, his massive sword cleaving through hollow after hollow. Rukia displayed surprising agility for her size, using quick, precise strikes combined with what appeared to be magical attacks. She traced patterns in the air that released blasts of ice and binding energy. Ben, meanwhile, discovered that his diamond head form had new capabilities. The crystalline structures he created now contained spiritual energy, making them especially effective against the hollows. When a particularly large hollow tried to bite him, Ben created a crystal barrier that not only blocked the attack but seemed to burn the creature on contact. Your transformations are adapting to spiritual combat, Rukia called to him as she leapt past, freezing a hollow in mid-lunge. I'm not complaining. Ben replied, firing a barrage of crystal shards that pierced through multiple hollows at once. For all their ferocity, the hollows seemed uncoordinated and almost desperate, charging forward recklessly rather than with any tactical sense. They really want a piece of you, Ichigo noted, landing beside Ben after dispatching another hollow. Never seen them so fixated on a single target before. Story of my life, Ben replied, encasing a hollow in crystal before shattering it with a punch. Everywhere I go, something wants to either kill me or capture me. The battle continued for several minutes, the three of them working with surprising coordination for a newly formed team. Ben found himself impressed by Ichigo and Rukia's fighting skills. They moved with the practiced efficiency of people who had fought together many times before. As they dispatched the last visible hollow, Ben felt the Omnitrix begin to time out. Heads up, I'm about to change back. The familiar beeping preceded a flash of green light, returning him to human form just as silence fell over the street. That was, actually pretty fun, Ben admitted, breathing heavily. You guys do this every night? Not usually in these numbers, Rukia said, sheathing her sword. The hollows were definitely attracted to you, or more specifically, to your Omnitrix. A side effect of its dimensional properties, perhaps, came Urahara's voice from behind them. The shopkeeper approached casually, as if a massive battle hadn't just taken place. Most fascinating. You could have helped, you know, Ichigo grumbled. And deprive myself of observing our interdimensional friend in action? Never. Urahara's eyes gleamed with scientific interest. His abilities are even more impressive than I anticipated. Ben felt a strange prickling at the back of his neck. Guys? I don't think we're done yet. The air above them distorted, tearing open to reveal the largest hollow yet, easily 20 feet tall with a serpentine body and multiple arms. Its mask was more elaborate than the others, with horns and red markings. That's not a regular hollow, Rukia said tensely. That's a Minos Grande. What now? Ben asked. A much more powerful class of hollow, Urahara explained, his jovial demeanor gone. Formed when hundreds of hollows merged together. The Minos let out a deafening roar, focusing its gaze directly on Ben. The watch, Rukia realized. It's even more attracted to the Omnitrix's energy. Ben checked the Omnitrix, still in recharge mode. Slight problem. I need a few minutes before I can transform again. Stay back, Ichigo ordered, stepping forward with his sword raised. Rukia and I will handle this. The Minos opened its mouth, gathering a ball of red energy that grew rapidly in size and intensity. Zero. Rukia shouted. Everyone move. The massive energy blast tore through the street where they had been standing moments before, leaving a smoking trench in the pavement. Ichigo launched himself at the creature, swinging his sword with tremendous force, but the Minos batted him away with one of its many arms. Rukia tried freezing its legs, but the ice cracked almost immediately under the creature's power. Ben watched helplessly as his new allies struggled against the monster. The Omnitrix was still recharging, its faceplate blinking slowly. Come on, come on. I need you now. Urahara appeared beside him, no longer the carefree shopkeeper. His eyes were hard, calculating. Your device, how much longer until it's operational? A minute, maybe 2, Ben answered. Not soon enough. Perhaps I can help with that. Urahara placed his palm over the Omnitrix, his hand glowing with blue energy. Your device feeds on spiritual energy. Let me provide some. Ben felt a surge of power flowing into the Omnitrix, the faceplate immediately glowing bright green. That's some trick. One of many. Urahara stepped back. Now, I believe you have a Minos to deal with. The Omnitrix was fully charged. Ben quickly cycled through his aliens, looking for the right one for this situation. Time to go big or go home. He slammed down the dial, energy washing over him as he transformed. Way big. The massive Tucuster form towered even over the Minos, Ben's transformed body now standing at nearly 100 feet tall. Like with Diamond Head, strange energy patterns flowed through his white and red body, concentrated particularly around his chest and the fin on his head. The Minos actually hesitated, its masked face somehow conveying surprise at suddenly finding itself the smaller combatant. Now this is more like it. Ben's booming voice echoed across Karakura town. He clenched his massive fist. Let's see how you like being the little guy for a change. On the ground, Ichigo and Rukia stared up in astonishment. What the hell is that? Ichigo demanded. A Takuster, Urahara answered, eyes gleaming with excitement. A cosmic entity of immense power, if I'm interpreting the spiritual signature correctly. Ben engaged the Minos, grabbing two of its arms and yanking it away from the rift it was emerging from. The creature struggled and fired another Ciro, but Ben deflected it with one hand, the beam harmlessly dispersing into the night sky. My turn. Ben crossed his arms in front of his chest, focusing the cosmic energy inherent to Wei Big's form. The spiritual energy that had infused the transformation added a new dimension to the attack. The cross-shaped beam that erupted from his arms carried swirling patterns of blue spiritual energy alongside the usual white cosmic power. The enhanced beam struck the Minos dead center, piercing through its mask and continuing through its body. The creature let out one final, echoing cry before dissolving into spirit particles. Ben stood triumphant for a moment, then noticed the destruction their battle had caused to the surrounding area. Oops. I might have gone a little overboard. He reverted back to human form in a flash of green light, dropping back to street level where the others waited. That was. Rukia seemed at a loss for words. Awesome. Ben suggested with a grin. Destructive, she corrected, though a small smile tugged at her lips. Effective, Ichigo added, looking impressed despite himself. Never seen a Minos go down that easily. Urahara was practically giddy with excitement. The spiritual adaptations to your transformations are remarkable. Each alien form incorporates Ryatsu differently, enhancing its natural abilities. So the Omnitrix is, evolving? Ben examined the watch, which now seemed to be functioning normally, albeit with a slight bluish tint to its green glow. Adapting would be a more accurate term, Urahara said. It's integrating the spiritual principles of our universe into its function. Is that going to cause problems when I try to go home? Ben asked, the practical concern suddenly occurring to him. Urahara's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. It's possible. The more your device adapts to our world, the more complicated returning to your own dimension might become. Great. Ben sighed. So I need to get home soon, before the Omnitrix changes too much? It would be advisable, Urahara confirmed. Though the data we gather from these adaptations might actually help us create a stable pathway home for you. Ichigo clapped a hand on Ben's shoulder. In the meantime, you've got a place to stay. And clearly, we could use your help with the hollow situation. Ben looked around at his new allies, Ichigo with his massive sword and fierce determination, Rukia with her calm competence, and the enigmatic Urahara with his hidden depths of knowledge and power. I guess there are worse places to be stranded, he admitted. And hey, fighting monsters in another dimension will make a great story when I get home. That's the spirit. Urahara said cheerfully. Now, let's get back to the shop. After tonight's excitement, I believe we all could use some rest. Tomorrow, we begin studying your Omnitrix in earnest, and perhaps give you a proper introduction to the spiritual world you found yourself in. As they walked back to the shop, Ben felt a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. He was trapped in an unfamiliar dimension with no immediate way home, but he had already found allies, and the Omnitrix was developing new capabilities he'd never imagined. Whatever this world had in store for him, Ben Tennyson was ready to face it head-on. After all, that's what heroes did, no matter which dimension they found themselves in. Chapter 2, Soul Society's interest. Ben woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the distant sound of arguing downstairs. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling in confusion before yesterday's events came flooding back. Different dimension. Soul Reapers. Hollows. Right. He sat up on the spare futon in Ichigo's room, checking the Omnitrix. The watch looked normal again, the green glow steady without the weird fluctuations from yesterday. But when he focused, he could feel something different about it, a subtle hum of energy that hadn't been there before. The door banged open, and Ichigo stomped in looking irritated. Finally awake, huh? Hope you like chaos, because my family's full of it. What was all that yelling? Ben asked, stretching. Just my dad's usual morning ambush. Ichigo tossed a bundle of clothes at Ben. These should fit you. Bathrooms down the hall if you want to shower. Your dad ambushes you. Ben raised an eyebrow. Every single day. Ichigo rolled his eyes. Calls it training. I call it being a psychopath. Ben laughed. Sounds like my grandpa Max, except with less surprise attacks and more weird alien food. 20 minutes later, freshly showered and dressed in borrowed clothes, Ben followed Ichigo downstairs. The Kurosaki household was brighter in daylight, a normal family home attached to a small medical clinic. A man with spiky black hair and a lab coat launched himself at Ichigo the moment they reached the bottom step. Good morning, Ichigo. Ichigo sidestepped the attack with practiced ease, sending his father face first into the wall. Every morning with this. The man recovered instantly, springing back to his feet. Excellent reflexes, my son. Your training continues to, he stopped, finally noticing Ben. Who's this? Dad, this is Ben. He's a friend from school. Staying with us for a while. Ben waved awkwardly. Thanks for having me, Mr. Kurosaki. Ichigo's father stared intensely at Ben for several uncomfortable seconds before breaking into a massive grin. Any friend of Ichigo's is welcome here. I'm Isshin Kurosaki, proud father and doctor extraordinaire. Two girls appeared from the kitchen, one with light brown hair and a sunny disposition, the other with darker hair and a more serious expression. I'm Yuzu, the cheerful one said, and that's Karen. Are you staying for breakfast? If it's not too much trouble, Ben replied. Not at all. Yuzu beamed. I always make extra because Dad and Ichigo eat like starving wolves. As they settled around the breakfast table, Ben couldn't help but notice how normal it all felt. Despite everything he'd seen yesterday, dimensional travel, soul-eating monsters, sword-wielding spirit warriors, here he was, eating rice and fish at a family breakfast. So, Ben, Isshin leaned forward with exaggerated interest, how did my antisocial son manage to make a friend like you? Dad, Ichigo warned. We, ran into each other, Ben said truthfully. Kind of a chance encounter that turned into a team-up. Karen eyed him suspiciously. You're not one of those weird friends with supernatural powers too, are you? Ben choked on his tea while Ichigo stiffened. What? No. Why would you think that? Ben sputtered. Karen rolled her eyes. Please. Ichigo thinks we don't notice, but he's been hanging around with weird people and disappearing at all hours ever since he met Rukia. Karen. Don't be rude to Ichigo's friends, Yuzu chided. It's just an observation, Karen shrugged, returning to her breakfast. Isshin laughed loudly. My children are so perceptive. A father couldn't be prouder. Ben shot Ichigo a questioning look, but the orange-haired teen just shook his head slightly, not here, not now. After breakfast, they headed out, supposedly for school, though Ichigo led them in the opposite direction. Your family seems nice, Ben commented. A little crazy, but nice. They're okay, Ichigo conceded. And Karen's more perceptive than I give her credit for. She can see spirits too. Sometimes. Not as clearly as me, but she knows something's up. Ichigo kicked a pebble down the street. I try to keep them out of the spiritual stuff as much as possible. Where are we headed now? Urahara's. He wants to run more tests on your watch, and Rukia's meeting us there to discuss our next move. Ben nodded, falling into step beside Ichigo. So, what's your story? How'd you end up as a Soul Reaper? Ichigo was quiet for a moment. Rukia showed up in my room one night hunting a hollow. She got injured protecting me and my family, so she transferred her powers to me temporarily. That's possible. Wasn't supposed to be. Ichigo's expression darkened. Created a whole mess of problems. Soul Society doesn't like humans getting Soul Reaper powers. But you're still doing it. Yeah, well, I never was good at following rules. Ichigo smirked. Besides, someone has to protect this town. They reached Urahara's shop to find the eccentric shopkeeper waiting outside, fan fluttering despite the cool morning. Ah! Right on time. Urahara greeted them. And how is our interdimensional visitor feeling this morning? Better than yesterday, Ben admitted. The watch seems stable now. Excellent, excellent. Come inside, we have much to discuss. Rukia was already seated at the table in the back room, alongside a large muscular man with cornrowed hair and small glasses whom Ben recognized from last night. Ben, this is Tessai, Urahara introduced them. My right-hand man and a master of Kido, what you might call spiritual magic. Tessai nodded solemnly. A pleasure to meet you formally, Ben Dano. Dano? Ben whispered to Ichigo. Just go with it, Ichigo whispered back. They settled around the table, and Urahara produced a device that looked like a cross between a computer tablet and a Victorian-era contraption, complete with brass gears and tiny spinning dials. I've been analyzing the spiritual disruption from your arrival, Urahara explained, tapping the screen. It created a ripple effect through the spiritual realms. Quite remarkable. Is that bad? Ben asked. It certainly got attention, Rukia said grimly. I received a message from Soul Society this morning. The Department of Research and Development detected the anomaly and is investigating. Department of what now? Ben looked between them. Soul Society is organized into different divisions, Rukia explained. The 12th division handles research and technology under Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi. And what happens when they finish investigating? Ben asked, not liking her tone. Urahara and Rukia exchanged glances. Mayuri is enthusiastic about his research, Urahara said carefully. Particularly when it comes to unique specimens. And by enthusiastic, he means, would dissect you without a second thought, Ichigo added bluntly. Great. So not only am I stuck in another dimension, but now some mad scientist wants to cut me open. Ben sighed. Story of my life. Don't worry, Ichigo said firmly. We won't let that happen. The conviction in his voice surprised Ben. They barely knew each other, yet Ichigo was already prepared to protect him against his own organization. Thank you, Ben said sincerely, then turned back to Urahara. Any progress on getting me home? Some, Urahara replied, pulling out another device. The dimensional rift that brought you here left traces of energy, a signature we might be able to replicate. But it's incredibly complex. How long are we talking? Weeks at minimum. The good news is, your Omnitrix might actually help us. It's retained some properties from your dimension that could act as a homing beacon. Ben held up his wrist. So you need to study it more. Precisely. Urahara beamed. And in the meantime, it would be prudent for you to learn how to control its new spiritual properties. I can help with that, Ichigo volunteered. We could train together. And I can assist with the theoretical aspects of spiritual energy, Rukia added. Ben looked between them, genuinely moved by their willingness to help. Thanks, guys. The conversation was interrupted by a pulse of energy from the Omnitrix. Everyone tensed as the device glowed brightly for a moment before settling back to normal. It's been doing that periodically, Ben explained. Some kind of adjustment process, I think. Each pulse alters the spiritual landscape around us, Urahara observed. Like ripples in a pond. Ripples that hollows can feel, Rukia added with concern. And possibly Soul Society as well. Then we should probably start that training sooner rather than later, Ben suggested. I'd rather not be caught unprepared when your mad scientist buddy shows up. Ichigo grinned. Now you're talking. Beneath Urahara's shop, Ben discovered a massive underground training area, a desert-like space with rock formations stretching for what seemed like miles under an artificial sky. How is this even possible? Ben marveled, looking up at the convincing blue expanse above them. Spatial manipulation Kido, Urahara explained proudly. One of my more impressive creations, if I do say so myself. It's the perfect place to train without destroying the town, Ichigo added, already in his Soul Reaper form. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his available aliens. So what's the plan? Just start transforming and see what happens. Not quite, Rukia stepped forward, now dressed in a simple training uniform instead of her Soul Reaper attire. First, you need to understand what spiritual energy actually is and how it interacts with your transformations. For the next hour, Rukia explained the basics of Ryatsu, how it flowed through living beings, how Soul Reapers channeled it, and how it manifested in different forms. Ben listened with surprising attentiveness. If he was going to be stuck here, he needed to understand how things worked. Your Omnitrix seems to be absorbing and adapting to Ryatsu, Rukia concluded. Each transformation now carries a spiritual component along with its genetic one. Which means what, exactly? Ben asked. It means your aliens have new capabilities, Ichigo cut in. Like how your diamond form could hurt hollows yesterday. Diamond Head, Ben corrected automatically. And yeah, that felt different. Stronger. Let's test it, Ichigo suggested, drawing his massive sword. Transform and we'll spar a little. Ben grinned, selecting an alien on the Omnitrix. Don't blame me if you get stomped. He slammed down the dial. Humongosaur. The transformation washed over him, his body growing and changing into the massive dinosaur-like Vaxasaurian form. Like before, strange energy patterns flowed through his body, concentrated around his chest and limbs. Ichigo whistled, looking up at the 12-foot reptilian form. Impressive. But size isn't everything. Without warning, Ichigo leaped forward, sword flashing. Ben raised an arm to block, expecting the familiar resistance of Humongosaur's tough hide. Instead, something new happened. As the blade connected, spiritual energy flared around Ben's arm like an automatic defense, a golden barrier that caught Ichigo's sword and pushed back. Whoa! Ben stared at his arm in surprise. That's definitely new. Ichigo jumped back, equally shocked. Some kind of instinctive spiritual defense. Like Blood Vene, almost. Like what now? Never mind, Ichigo readied his sword again. Let's see what else you can do. The sparring session quickly turned into a full-blown training battle. Ben discovered that Humongosaur's spiritual adaptation granted him not just defensive capabilities but enhanced strength beyond his usual level. When he slammed a fist into the ground, the impact created a shock wave laced with golden energy that knocked Ichigo off his feet. That's cheating. Ichigo called out, though he was grinning as he leapt back up. Says the guy who can flash step. Ben countered, having witnessed Ichigo's incredible speed. They continued trading blows, Ichigo pushing Ben to explore his new abilities. When the Omnitrix eventually timed out, Ben was breathing hard but exhilarated. That was amazing! He exclaimed as he returned to human form. It's like each alien gets a different spiritual boost. Your Omnitrix is integrating Ryatsu into its transformations in unique ways, Rukia observed. Adapting each alien's natural abilities with spiritual components. Let's try another one, Ben suggested eagerly, checking that the Omnitrix had recharged. Over the next few hours, Ben cycled through several transformations, testing each one's new spiritual adaptations with Ichigo and Rukia's help. Swampfire's regenerative flames now burned away spiritual corruption, particularly effective against hollow miasma. XLR-8's speed gained a ghost-like quality, allowing him to partially phase through solid objects while maintaining momentum. Big Chill's intangibility now extended to spiritual entities, letting him freeze hollows even when they tried to shift dimensions. Echo Echo's sonic attacks gained the ability to disrupt spiritual bonds, potentially separating fused hollows. With each transformation, Ben grew more comfortable with the spiritual enhancements, learning to channel the energy consciously rather than relying on instinct. "You're a quick study," Rukia commented as Ben reverted from Echo Echo. "Most people take years to grasp Ryatsu manipulation." "The Omnitrix is doing most of the work," Ben admitted modestly. "I'm just along for the ride." "Don't sell yourself short," Ichigo countered, resting his sword on his shoulder. "The watch might provide the power, but you're the one figuring out how to use it." Their training session was interrupted by Urahara's arrival, the shopkeeper descending the long ladder with surprising grace. "Having fun, are we?" he called cheerfully. "I hate to interrupt, but we have company upstairs." "Soul Society?" Rukia tensed. "Not yet," Urahara assured her. "Just a few of Ichigo's friends who felt the spiritual pressure from your training. They're quite curious about our interdimensional visitor." Ichigo groaned. "Great. The gossip squad is here." Ben raised an eyebrow. "More Soul Reapers?" "Not exactly," Ichigo sighed. "Just more humans who can see spirits. And they love sticking their noses in my business." Back upstairs, they found 3 teenagers waiting in Urahara's shop, a tall, muscular young man with dark skin and shaggy hair, a bespectacled, serious-looking boy with neatly combed black hair, and a girl with long orange-brown hair and an extremely cheerful expression. "Ichigo," the girl called, waving enthusiastically. "We felt the weird spiritual pressure and came to see what's happening." "Is it another crisis? A new enemy?" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Ben with wide eyes. "Oh. Who's this? His spiritual pressure feels super weird." Thanks." Ben said uncertainly. Ichigo made quick introductions. "Ben, these are Orihime Inoue, Yasutora Sado, everyone calls him Chad, and Yuryu Ishida. Guys, this is Ben Tennyson. He's from another dimension." A brief silence followed as the 3 newcomers processed this information. "Of course he is," Yuryu finally said, adjusting his glasses. "Because a normal week would be too much to ask for." Ben couldn't help but laugh. "Believe me, I know the feeling." The tension broken, Ben gave them a condensed version of how he'd arrived in their world and what the Omnitrix could do. Orihime was particularly fascinated by the transformation aspect. "So you can become different aliens?" she asked excitedly. "Can you become a tiny alien with a propeller hat who shoots rainbows? Or maybe one that's made of pudding? Oh. Or one that," Orihime, Yuryu cut in gently, "I think Ben's aliens are more combat-oriented." "Some of them are pretty weird," Ben admitted with a smile, finding Orihime's enthusiasm refreshing. "I have one that's basically a walking pile of goop." "I'd be more interested in how this device works with spiritual energy," Yuryu said, studying the Omnitrix from a distance. "Your Ryatsu signature is unlike anything I've felt before." "Ishida is a Quincy," Ichigo explained when Ben looked confused. "They're spiritually aware humans who can manipulate Raisher, spirit particles, into weapons." "My whole thing is turning into aliens," Ben shrugged. "I've learned not to judge." Chad, who had remained silent, finally spoke in a deep, quiet voice. "Will Soul Society come for him?" The question brought the room's mood down instantly. "Most likely," Rukia confirmed. The spiritual disturbance from Ben's arrival was significant. "And once Mayuri learns about the Omnitrix." "We're not going to let that happen," Ichigo stated firmly. "You can't fight all of Soul Society again, Kurosaki," Yuryu pointed out pragmatically. "Watch me." "That won't be necessary," Urahara interjected smoothly. "There are other ways to handle Soul Society besides direct confrontation. In the meantime, our priority should be stabilizing Ben's spiritual signature so it doesn't continue broadcasting his presence." "And how do we do that?" Ben asked. Urahara produced what looked like a wristband made of black material. This is a Ryatsu suppressor, a prototype I've been working on. It won't completely hide your spiritual pressure, but it should dampen it enough to buy us time. Ben accepted the band, sliding it onto his wrist opposite the Omnitrix. Will this affect my transformations? It shouldn't, Urahara assured him. It's designed to work with your natural spiritual energy, not the Omnitrix's function. In the meantime, Chad suggested quietly, he should stay with one of us. Soul Society will check Ichigo's house first if they come looking. Good point, Ichigo conceded. Ben can rotate between our places. Make him harder to track. Ben felt a strange mix of emotions, touched by these people's willingness to protect him, yet guilty for bringing trouble to their doorstep. I appreciate all of this, but I don't want to put any of you at risk. Too late for that, Yuryu said dryly. We've been at risk since we met Kurosaki. He's not wrong, Ichigo admitted with a half-smile. Orihime clapped her hands decisively. It's settled then. Ben will stay with me tonight. I'll make my special red bean paste and sardine curry to celebrate our new friend. Everyone except Orihime winced slightly. That's very kind, Ben managed, catching the sympathetic glances from the others. The planning session was interrupted by a pulse of heavy spiritual pressure descending on the shop. This was different from hollow energy, more refined, more controlled, and significantly more powerful. Soul Reapers, Rukia breathed, her expression growing tense. At least lieutenant level. Already? Ichigo reached for his substitute Soul Reaper badge. That was fast. Urahara moved to the window, peering out through the blinds. 3 of them. Renji Abarai, Ranjaku Matsumoto, and, oh my. Nimue Kuratsuchi. Mayuri sent his lieutenant. Rukia's eyes widened. This isn't just a routine investigation. Who's Nimue? Ben asked. Captain Kuratsuchi's artificially created lieutenant, Urahara explained quietly. If she's here, it means Mayuri has a specific interest in you. Which means someone needs to not be here, Ichigo said pointedly, looking at Ben. Ben checked the Omnitrix, fully charged and ready. I could transform, try to slip past them. Too risky, Rukia shook her head. They'd sense your spiritual pressure, especially during transformation. The back exit, Urahara decided quickly. Through the training ground. Tensai will create a Kido barrier to mask your departure. I'll go with him, Chad volunteered. My house is in the opposite direction. Urahara nodded. Ichigo, Rukia, you stay and distract our visitors. Act normal. The rest of you, out the back, quickly. As Ben followed Chad and the others toward the back room, Ichigo caught his arm. Be careful. Don't transform unless absolutely necessary. We'll find you once they're gone. Thanks, Ben said sincerely. I owe you guys. Just doing what friends do, Ichigo replied with a shrug. Friend. The word stuck with Ben as they hurried down to the underground training area. Less than 2 days in this dimension, and already he'd found people willing to call him friend, to protect him. Tensai met them below, quickly creating a complex spiritual barrier around Ben that felt like a thin layer of static electricity on his skin. This will mask your Ryatsu temporarily, the large man explained. But it won't last long, perhaps 30 minutes. That should be enough, Chad said quietly. We'll be far from here by then. They exited through a hidden passage that led to an alley several blocks from Urahara's shop. Ben could feel the tingle of Tensai's barrier fading with each passing minute. We should hurry, Yuryu advised, scanning the area. Soul Reapers can use Shunpa, Flash Step, to cover ground quickly. They moved through back streets and alleys, avoiding main roads. Ben's mind raced, weighing options. He'd been in tight spots before, but being hunted in an unfamiliar dimension added a whole new level of complication. I don't get it, Ben said as they hurried along. Why would this Mayuri guy be so interested in me? You'd think Soul Society would have seen weirder things than a guy who turns into aliens. Soul Society exists in a state of relative stagnation, Yuryu explained coldly. New technologies or powers that might disrupt their order are treated as threats or research opportunities, often both. And Mayuri is particularly enthusiastic about unique specimens, Orihime added with uncharacteristic seriousness. Enthusiastic how? Chad's deep voice rumbled, he dissects them. While they're still alive, Yuryu finished grimly. Ben swallowed hard. Right. No getting caught then. They had made it about 10 blocks from Urahara's shop when Ben felt Tessai's barrier dissolve completely. Almost immediately, the Omnitrix pulsed with energy, as if responding to the removal of the suppression. That's not good, Yuryu said, staring at the watch. They'll feel that pulse for sure. As if on cue, a figure appeared on a rooftop ahead of them, a red-haired man in Soul Reaper attire with tribal tattoos and a white headband. A sword hung at his side, and his expression was serious as he spotted their group. Lieutenant Abarai, Yuryu muttered. We need to split up. Too late for that, came a female voice from behind them. They turned to find a Soul Reaper with strawberry blonde hair and an ample figure. Despite her pleasant appearance, her eyes were sharp and assessing. Lieutenant Matsumoto, Orihime greeted her nervously. Hello, Orihime, the woman replied with a small smile. I wish this was a social call, but we're here on official business. Her gaze fixed on Ben. Is this the one causing the spiritual disturbance? Before anyone could answer, a third Soul Reaper appeared, a young woman with a blank expression and dark hair in a braid. Unlike the other two, who projected an air of professional duty, something about her felt distinctly artificial. Subject confirmed, she said in a monotone voice. Spiritual signature matches the anomaly. Captain Kuratsuchi requests his immediate transport to the 12th Division for examination. Nimue, the red-haired Soul Reaper, Renji, sighed. We're supposed to question him first, not just grab him. My father's orders were explicit, Nimue replied tonelessly. Yeah, well, Head Captain Kairaku's orders supersede your father's, Renji countered. We talk to him here, then decide. Ben stepped forward, raising his hands placatingly. Look, I'm happy to explain everything. There's been a misunderstanding. Ben Tennyson, Ranjaku said, surprising him with knowledge of his name. From another dimension, possessing a device that transforms you into various beings while emitting massive spiritual disturbances. Does that sound about right? Pretty much, Ben admitted. But I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just trying to get home. By working with Kisuke Urahara. Renji raised an eyebrow. That's usually a recipe for trouble, kid. He's helping me fix the Omnitrix so I can return to my dimension, Ben explained, holding up his wrist. That's all. Nimue's eyes locked onto the Omnitrix with sudden intensity. The device appears to have integrated with his spiritual network. Fascinating. The way she said, fascinating, sent a chill down Ben's spine. Look, Ben continued, I understand your concern, but I'm not a threat to Soul Society. I've been helping fight Hollows since I got here. That may be true, Ranjaku acknowledged, but the fact remains that your presence is causing significant spiritual disturbances. The head captain wants you brought in for questioning. And my captain wants you brought in for extensive study, Nimue added. Ben tensed, ready to activate the Omnitrix if necessary. Chad and Yuryu moved closer to him, while Orihime looked conflicted. He's under our protection, Chad stated simply, his arm beginning to transform with his own unique spiritual power. Renji's hand moved to his sword. Don't make this difficult. We have orders. And we have principles, Yuryu replied, spiritual energy gathering around his wrist in the form of a Quincy cross. The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of Ichigo and Rukia, both flash-stepping into the tense scene. Renji. Ranjaku. Rukia called out. Stand down. We can resolve this without conflict. Rukia, Renji acknowledged her with a nod. You know our orders. I know that grabbing someone from another dimension and handing them over to Mayuri is a terrible first impression of Soul Society, she countered. We're just following orders, Ranjaku said, though she looked uncomfortable. Since when did that become an excuse for doing the wrong thing? Ichigo challenged, stepping beside Ben. Ben appreciated the support, but tension was escalating quickly. He needed to defuse the situation before it turned into a full-blown fight. Maybe we can compromise. I'll answer your questions, but I'm not going anywhere for extensive study. Renji and Ranjaku exchanged glances, apparently considering this, but Nimue remained impassive. Captain Kuratsuchi will not accept compromise, she stated flatly. The subject must be brought in. If verbal persuasion is insufficient. She raised her hand, revealing a concealed syringe. Alternative methods are authorized. That's not happening, Ichigo growled, his spiritual pressure rising ominously. The confrontation might have erupted into violence then and there, but a massive spiritual presence suddenly descended on them all, a heavy, oppressive energy that made breathing difficult. Everyone, Soul Reapers included, looked skyward in alarm. A garganta, a tear in the dimensional fabric, opened above the street. Multiple hollows poured through, but these weren't normal hollows. Their masks and bodies showed strange colorations and patterns, and their spiritual energy felt warped, almost alien. What the hell? Renji drew his sword. Those hollows feel weird. One particularly large hollow stepped forward. Its body was humanoid but covered in red crystalline growths, and its mask had geometric patterns unlike any normal hollow. When it spoke, its voice resonated with multiple tones. The Omnitrix bearer, it hissed, focusing directly on Ben. Give us the device. Ben stared in shock. It knows about the Omnitrix. The crystalline hollow roared and leapt from the garganta, followed by dozens more abnormal hollows. Soul Reapers and humans alike put aside their standoff, drawing weapons to face the new threat. We'll continue this discussion later, Ranjaku told Ben, unsheathing her sword. Try not to die or get captured before then. No promises, Ben muttered, activating the Omnitrix. The battle erupted across the street. Renji's sword extended into a segmented whip-like form that tore through multiple hollows at once. Ranjaku's blade dissolved into ash that swirled and cut like a deadly cloud. Nimue fought with precise, almost mechanical movements, her bare hands punching through hollow masks with frightening strength. Meanwhile, Ichigo's massive blade cleaved through enemies with ease, while Rukia's dance-like movement summoned waves of ice that froze hollows solid. Chad's transformed arms smashed through multiple opponents, and Yuryu's energy arrows picked off targets with surgical precision. Orihime created shields that protected them all from surprise attacks. Ben scrolled through his aliens quickly, assessing the situation. Need something with range and power. He selected his choice and slammed down the dial. Heat blast. Flames erupted around his transformed body, but unlike his usual orange-red fire, these flames had a blue-white core with spiraling patterns of energy. Ben immediately felt the difference. The spiritual energy of this world enhanced his pyrokinesis, making the flames hotter and more responsive to his will. Let's turn up the heat. Ben launched a barrage of fireballs at the oncoming hollows, each projectile burning with spiritual energy that seemed especially effective against the creatures. The crystalline hollow dodged Ben's attacks with surprising agility, closing the distance between them. The Omnitrix will be ours, it growled, swiping at Ben with crystal-covered claws. Ben created a fire shield, blocking the attack. Sorry, but there's a long waiting list of freaks who want this watch, and you're at the back of the line. As they fought, Ben noticed something disturbing. The crystalline structure of the hollow seemed familiar. Too familiar. Guys, he called out, dodging another attack. I think this hollow has somehow copied Diamond Head's powers. What? Ichigo flash-stepped to Ben's side, blocking a crystal spike with his sword. How's that possible? I don't know. But look at it, those crystals are just like my Petrosapien form. The hollow laughed, a disturbing multi-tone sound. We evolve. We adapt. We consume. Your power will join ours. It slammed its fists into the ground, creating crystal spires that erupted upward, a technique Ben himself had used as Diamond Head. Everyone scattered to avoid being impaled. This is bad, Rukia said, rejoining them. If hollows can somehow absorb or mimic your transformations, then I'm basically giving them new weapons every time I fight, Ben finished grimly. Great. The battle continued to rage around them, but now Ben noticed other hollows displaying unusual abilities. One moved with XLR8 speed, another had limbs stretching like Wildvine's tendrils, and a third released sonic screeches reminiscent of Echo Echo. How are they copying your aliens? Ichigo demanded between sword swings. The Omnitrix must be leaking DNA information into the spiritual plane, Rukia theorized. And hollows, being spiritual entities that consume others to evolve, are absorbing it somehow. The crystalline hollow pressed its attack on Ben, growing larger as it absorbed the spiritual particles from fallen comrades. More. We need more power. Ben changed tactics, focusing his flames into a concentrated beam that burned hot enough to melt the creature's crystal armor. It screamed in pain but continued advancing, regenerating its damaged parts. This isn't working, Ben muttered. Need to try something else. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest flashed, indicating a timing out transformation. No, not now. In a flash of green light, Ben reverted to human form, vulnerable in the middle of the battlefield. The crystalline hollow saw its opportunity and lunged. Ben! Ichigo shouted, too far away to intercept. The Omnitrix flashed again, apparently responding to the immediate danger. Ben slammed his palm against it without scrolling through options. Come on, give me something good. Ghost Freak. The transformation washed over him just as the hollow's claws reached him. The ghostly ectoneurite form allowed the attack to pass harmlessly through Ben's now intangible body. Phew, that was close, Ben breathed in Ghost Freak's whispery voice. But something felt off about this transformation. The usual single eye of Ghost Freak was now joined by several smaller ones that opened across his body, and his form seemed more substantial, more present, than the ghostly alien usually felt. Spiritual energy coursed through him, creating an eerie purple glow around his body. This is new, Ben murmured, examining his altered form. The crystalline hollow paused, seemingly confused by Ben's new appearance. What is this? Neither hollow nor soul reaper nor human. I'm your worst nightmare, Ben replied, finding that Ghost Freak's typically creepy voice now carried an echo that resonated on a spiritual level. He could feel the spiritual world around him in a way he never had before, seeing the flows of energy, the connections between souls, the very fabric of this dimension. Acting on instinct, Ben reached out with his mind, connecting with the spiritual essence of the hollow before him. Let's see what makes you tick. A link formed between them, like tendrils of consciousness stretching from Ben to the creature. Through this connection, Ben sensed the truth, these weren't normal hollows at all. Someone or something had been experimenting on them, injecting them with samples of energy collected from Ben's transformations. You've been engineered, Ben realized aloud. Someone's been studying me through you. The hollow recoiled, breaking the mental connection. Master will not be pleased. We were only meant to test you, not reveal, it cut itself off, seemingly horrified by its own slip. Master? Who's controlling you? Ben demanded, floating closer. Instead of answering, the crystalline hollow suddenly emitted a high-pitched wail that caused the other modified hollows to retreat toward the Garganta. They're running away. Renji called out. Not for long, Ranjiku replied, raising her sword. Growl, Hiniko. Her blade dissolved into ash again, swirling toward the escaping hollows, but the crystalline leader created a massive crystal barrier that even her attack couldn't penetrate quickly enough. By the time they broke through, the Garganta was closing with the last hollow escaping through it. Silence fell over the battlefield, everyone processing what had just happened. Ben reverted to human form, the strange connection he'd felt as Ghost Freak fading. What the hell was that about? Renji demanded, turning to Ben. Those weren't normal hollows, Ben explained. When I was Ghost Freak, I could sense it, they've been modified, engineered with DNA from my aliens somehow. Impossible, Nimue stated. Hollow evolution does not incorporate non-spiritual entities. Unless someone's been experimenting, Yuryu suggested darkly. Deliberately introducing alien DNA into hollows. All eyes turned to Nimue, whose father was notorious for such experiments. My father has conducted no such research, she said flatly. He has no samples of the subject's transformations to work with. Then who? Rukia wondered. Who else would have both the capability and the interest? An uncomfortable silence fell over the group as they considered the implications. Regardless, Renji finally said, our orders still stand. Ben Tennyson needs to come with us to Soul Society for questioning. After what we just saw. Ichigo stepped forward protectively. Someone's targeting him specifically. Soul Society is the last place he should be right now, especially anywhere near Mayuri. I agree, Ranjaku said surprisingly. These circumstances warrant caution. I'll report to the head captain directly about these developments. Captain Kuratsuchi will not be pleased, Nimue observed tonelessly. When is he ever? Renji muttered. Ben looked between the Soul Reapers, realizing the encounter had shifted the dynamic. So, what now? Now, Ranjaku decided, we return to Soul Society to report what we've witnessed. The head captain will determine the next steps. And me? Ben asked cautiously. Remain with Ichigo and the others for the time being, she instructed. But don't leave Karakura town. When we return, and we will return, we expect to find you here. Not much choice, considering I can't create interdimensional portals, Ben pointed out. Yet, Renji added dryly. Given everything else you can do, I wouldn't be surprised. The three Soul Reapers prepared to depart, opening a senkamen, a traditional Japanese door appearing in mid-air, leading to Soul Society. This isn't over, Renji told Ichigo and Rukia. Watch your backs, and his. We always do, Ichigo replied. As the Soul Reapers disappeared through the portal, the tension in the air finally dissipated. Ben let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That went, better than expected? He ventured. For now, Yuryu cautioned. But they'll be back, with clearer orders. And we still don't know who's behind those modified hollows, Chad added. Rukia's expression was troubled. We should return to Urahara's immediately. He needs to know about this development. Back at Urahara's shop, the eccentric scientist listened intently to their account of the battle and the strange hollows. His usual playful demeanor was replaced with thoughtful seriousness. Modified hollows incorporating alien DNA, he mused, tapping his fan against his chin. Most concerning. And you say they specifically targeted the Omnitrix? They knew what it was called, Ben confirmed. Their leader even mentioned a master before catching itself. The plot thickens. Urahara declared, though his eyes remained calculating. Someone with knowledge of both hollows and your device is conducting experiments. Someone who's been monitoring you since your arrival. But who could that be? Orihime wondered. The only people who know about Ben are in this room, plus those Soul Reapers who just left. Not necessarily, Urahara countered. Ben's arrival created a significant spiritual disturbance. Anyone with sufficient spiritual awareness could have detected it and investigated. Great, so my suspect list is anyone with spiritual powers, Ben sighed. That narrows it down. Perhaps I can help with that, came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a black cat sauntering into the room, tail held high with feline confidence. Yoruchi-san. Orihime exclaimed. To Ben's shock, the cat spoke in a deep, masculine voice. I've been conducting reconnaissance in Hueco Mundo since we detected the dimensional disturbance. A talking cat, Ben stated flatly. You know what? At this point, why not? The cat gave him what could only be described as a smirk. You haven't seen anything yet, kid. In a puff of smoke, the cat transformed into a dark-skinned woman with purple hair, completely naked. Ben yelped and covered his eyes immediately. Yoruchi-san. Rukia scolded while Orihime blushed scarlet. Please put on some clothes. You're no fun, the woman, Yoruchi, replied with a laugh. Ben heard rustling fabric and Urahara's amused chuckling. Is it safe to look now? Ben asked, eyes still firmly shut. Yes, I'm decent, Yoruchi confirmed. Though your definition of decent may differ from mine. Ben cautiously lowered his hand to find Yoruchi now wearing a simple orange shirt and black pants. She sat cross-legged at the table, helping herself to tea. As I was saying, she continued as if the whole naked transformation had been perfectly normal. I've been investigating in Hueco Mundo, the realm where hollows originate. After Ben's arrival, I detected unusual activity in the outer regions, where few venture. What kind of activity? Ichigo pressed. Someone has established a laboratory there, Yoruchi revealed. Hidden, but not well enough. I couldn't get too close without detection, but I saw hollows being brought in and, different ones coming out. The modified hollows we fought, Yuryu surmised. Most likely, Yoruchi agreed. And I caught a glimpse of who might be behind it. She turned to Urahara. Do you remember Ryosaki Kajiro? Urahara's eyes widened slightly. Kajiro? He's supposed to be dead. Evidently, rumors of his demise were exaggerated, Yoruchi said dryly. Who's Ryosaki Kajiro? Ben asked, looking between them. Former third seat of Squad 12, Urahara explained. This was back when I was captain, before Mayuri. Brilliant scientist, but with questionable ethics, even by my admittedly flexible standards. What happened to him? Rukia inquired. He was exiled for conducting forbidden experiments on merging hollows with other spiritual entities, Urahara said grimly. He believed soul society was stagnant, that we needed to evolve by incorporating powers from other sources. Like alien DNA from another dimension, Ben realized. Precisely, Yoruchi confirmed. Your arrival must have been a gift from heaven for someone with his interests. The implications hung heavy in the air. Not only was Ben stuck in an unfamiliar dimension, but now he was being targeted by a mad scientist with an evolution obsession. So what's the plan? Ben finally asked. I still need to get home, but I can't exactly ignore someone creating alien hollow hybrids with my DNA. First priority remains fixing the Omnitrix and creating a stable pathway home for you, Urahara decided. But we'll need to accelerate our timeline. If Kajiro is collecting and analyzing your transformations, the situation could escalate rapidly. We should find his lab, Ichigo suggested. Shut down his operation before it gets worse. Easier said than done, Yoruchi cautioned. Hueco Mundo is vast and hostile. Even knowing the approximate location, mounting an expedition would be dangerous. Not to mention we still have Soul Society to worry about, Rukia added. They'll be back, with more definitive orders regarding Ben. Ben stood up, decision made. Then we multitask. Urahara continues working on getting me home. Yoruchi keeps gathering intel on this Kajiro guy. And I continue training to master these new spiritual aspects of my transformations. And when Soul Society returns? Yuryu asked skeptically. Ben shrugged. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm not letting anyone dissect me or the Omnitrix, but I'm also not looking to make enemies here. Ichigo nodded approvingly. Sounds like a plan. A chaotic, multi-fronted, likely to go wrong plan, Yuryu muttered. So, business as usual, then. Pretty much, Chad agreed quietly. As night fell over Karakura town, Ben found himself standing on the roof of Urahara's shop, staring at the unfamiliar stars of this dimension. Despite the danger and uncertainty, he felt strangely at peace. He'd been in tight spots before, faced impossible odds, and always found a way through. The roof access door opened, and Ichigo joined him at the railing. "Penny for your thoughts?" the Soul Reaper asked. "Just thinking about home," Ben admitted. "My friends, my family. They must be worried sick." "We'll get you back to them," Ichigo promised. "Though I have to say, you're handling this whole, stranded in another dimension, thing pretty well." Ben laughed. "This isn't even the weirdest situation I've been in this month." "Really? 2 weeks ago, I fought a cosmic entity that eats suns while riding on the back of a time-traveling dinosaur." Ichigo stared at him for a moment before breaking into laughter. "Your world sounds insane. Says the guy who fights monsters with a sword the size of a door and takes orders from old men in a spiritual afterlife dimension," Ben countered with a grin. "Fair point." They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the night sky. "Thanks," Ben said finally. "For helping me, standing up for me. You barely know me, but you've put yourself on the line." Ichigo shrugged. "That's what I do. Can't seem to help myself." He glanced at Ben. "Besides, I know what it's like to suddenly get thrown into powers and responsibilities you never asked for. The Soul Reaper thing was an accident, right? Rukia gave you her powers?" "Yeah. 1 minute I'm a normal high school student with a weird ability to see ghosts, the next I'm slicing monsters with a magic sword and dealing with a supernatural bureaucracy." Ichigo smiled wryly. "Life gets weird sometimes." "Tell me about it," Ben agreed, looking down at the Omnitrix. "I was just a 10-year-old kid on summer vacation when this thing attached itself to my wrist. Changed everything. Do you ever regret it?" Ichigo asked. "Getting the watch?" Ben thought about it seriously. "Sometimes. It's a lot of responsibility, a lot of danger. But then I think about all the people I've been able to help, all the friends I've made. No, I don't regret it." Ichigo nodded in understanding. "Same here. Life would be simpler without Soul Reaper powers, but I wouldn't give them up. Not when they let me protect people." The Omnitrix suddenly pulsed with energy, the familiar green glow brightening momentarily. Both teens tensed, but nothing further happened. "Still adjusting to this world's spiritual energy," Ben explained, examining the device. "Urahara says it's stabilizing, but it'll probably keep doing this for a while. Each pulse is like a beacon," Ichigo noted with concern. "To Hollows, Soul Society, and apparently this Kajiro guy." "Yeah, subtlety has never been my strong suit," Ben admitted. "Or the Omnitrix's, for that matter." A sudden explosion of spiritual pressure from across town cut their conversation short. Both teens straightened, instantly alert. "Hollow?" Ben asked, already activating the Omnitrix. "Yeah, but different from the ones earlier today," Ichigo confirmed, his spiritual senses more developed than Ben's. "Multiple signals, moving fast." "So much for a quiet night," Ben remarked, cycling through his alien options. "Welcome to my world," Ichigo replied, using his badge to separate from his human body, emerging in Soul Reaper form. "Race you there?" Ben grinned, selecting an alien. "You're on." He slammed down the dial. XLR8. The Kineceleran transformation washed over him, enhanced by spiritual energy that created ghostly blue trails behind him as he moved. "Try to keep up, Soul Reaper." Ichigo smirked, readying for flash step. "Big talk from someone who's about to eat my dust." They launched themselves across Karakura town, racing toward the disturbance, a human-turned-alien and a human-turned-Soul Reaper, unlikely allies in a battle neither had expected to fight. As he accelerated to speeds that blurred the world around him, Ben felt a strange certainty. Whatever this dimension threw at him next, he wasn't facing it alone. And that made all the difference. Chapter 3, Convergence, again. Urahara called out, fan fluttering excitedly. This time, try channeling the Ryatsu before you transform. Ben nodded, sweat beading on his forehead after hours of intense training. 3 days had passed since the modified hollow attack, and he'd barely stopped to breathe. Between training sessions with Urahara, combat practice with Ichigo, and theoretical lessons from Rukia, Ben's understanding of spiritual energy had advanced rapidly. He closed his eyes, focusing on the spiritual energy around him as Rukia had taught. In the weeks since his arrival in this dimension, his spiritual awareness had grown exponentially, likely accelerated by the Omnitrix's adaptations. Feel the Ryatsu gathering, Rukia instructed from nearby. Like water flowing into a reservoir. Ben visualized it, feeling the energy pooling around the Omnitrix. The device hummed in response, its green glow taking on a bluish tint. Now transform. Urahara commanded. Ben activated the Omnitrix, selected an alien, and slammed down the dial. Chroma Stone. The crystalline Crystalcipian form materialized, but with a noticeable difference from previous transformations. Instead of spiritual energy simply infusing his form after transformation, the Ryatsu was incorporated from the start, creating a more stable, harmonious blend. Patterns of blue spiritual energy flowed through Chromastone's purple crystals in organized, deliberate patterns rather than chaotic surges. Excellent. Urahara clapped in genuine approval. The energy distribution is much more refined. Ben examined his hands, feeling the difference. It's like the spiritual energy is responding to my thoughts now, not just flowing randomly. Precisely. Urahara approached, scanning Ben with one of his strange devices. You're directing the Ryatsu consciously rather than the Omnitrix simply absorbing it haphazardly. This should reduce the spiritual disruptions your transformations cause. And make me less of a beacon for hollows and soul society, Ben added. That too, Urahara agreed with a smile. Though, less noticeable isn't quite the same as hidden. Ben absorbed a nearby light source, converting it to energy as Chromastone naturally would. When he released it, the beam carried spiraling patterns of spiritual energy that seemed to bend space slightly where it hit. Fascinating, Urahara murmured. Your energy manipulation abilities are particularly compatible with Ryatsu. The applications are extraordinary. Is it enough to get me home? Ben asked, reverting to human form. The question had become something of a ritual between them, Ben asking, Urahara deflecting. This time, however, Urahara's expression shifted to something more serious. Actually, we've made significant progress on that front. Perhaps it's time to show you. Ben's heart leapt. Really? You found a way. Not exactly, Urahara tempered his expectations. But we've identified the dimensional frequency of your home universe, thanks to residual energy in the Omnitrix. He led Ben from the underground training area to a section of his shop Ben hadn't seen before, a laboratory filled with equipment that looked like a mad scientist's fever dream. Screens displayed incomprehensible data, strange devices hummed with energy, and in the center stood what looked like a circular doorframe covered in glowing runes. Welcome to my dimensional research lab, Urahara announced with a theatrical flourish. Where the impossible becomes merely improbable. Whoa, Ben breathed, taking in the complex machinery. This is some serious tech. Thank you. Most of it is my own design, Urahara said proudly. Though I've incorporated principles from various sources, Soul Society, Quincy artifacts, even technology recovered from Eisen's experiments. Ben approached the circular doorframe cautiously. Is this a portal? The beginnings of one, Urahara confirmed. It can currently establish a viewing window to your dimension, but creating a stable passage requires significantly more power and precision. I can see home through this? Ben asked, his voice tight with sudden emotion. Urahara nodded, his expression softening. Would you like to try? The connection is tentative, but it should hold for a few minutes. Ben swallowed hard. Yes. Please. Urahara began activating various controls, and the runes on the doorframe glowed brighter. The Omnitrix's energy signature acts as a homing beacon. It's seeking its own dimensional frequency, like a tuning fork resonating with its exact match. The air within the frame shimmered, distorting like heat waves before resolving into an image. Ben's breath caught in his throat as he recognized Bellwood, his hometown. The view seemed to be of the park near his house, where he often met up with Gwen and Kevin. Can they see us? Ben asked quietly. No, this is one way for now, Urahara explained. Think of it as looking through a window rather than opening a door. Ben stepped closer, his heart pounding as he spotted familiar figures in the distance, Gwen's distinctive red hair, Kevin's bulky silhouette. They appeared to be scanning the area with some kind of device. They're looking for me, Ben realized. Trying to find where I disappeared to. Urahara observed the scene with scientific interest. Time appears to flow differently between our dimensions, but not drastically so. Based on their behavior, I'd estimate perhaps only a day or two has passed there, compared to your week here. Can I go through? Ben asked, reaching toward the image. His fingers met solid resistance, like pressing against glass. Not yet, Urahara said gently. The barrier between dimensions is still too strong. We need a significant power source to punch through, and a more precise calibration to ensure you arrive safely. The image began to waver, static creeping in from the edges. The connection is destabilizing, Urahara reported, adjusting controls frantically. I can't maintain it any longer. The view of Bellwood dissolved into chaotic energy before disappearing entirely, leaving just the empty doorframe. Ben stood there for a long moment, staring at the space where his home had been visible seconds ago. The brief glimpse had made his situation more real somehow, until now, being trapped in another dimension had felt almost like an adventure. But seeing Gwen and Kevin searching for him, worry evident even at a distance, drove home what was at stake. How much longer, he asked, not turning around. To create a stable portal? Urahara considered carefully. With current resources, perhaps another week. Maybe less if we can acquire additional power sources. Ben nodded, taking a deep breath before facing Urahara. Thank you. For showing me, and for working on this. Of course, Urahara replied, uncharacteristically sincere. Everyone deserves to find their way home, Ben. The moment was interrupted by the shop's front bell jingling, followed by hurried footsteps. Ichigo appeared at the laboratory doorway, his expression tense. We've got a problem, he announced without preamble. Soul Society just sent another team to bring Ben in. And this time, they're not taking no for an answer. The situation in the main room of Urahara's shop was tense. Two Soul Reapers Ben hadn't met before stood with stern expressions, while Rukia argued with them in hushed but intense tones. This is Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya of Squad 10, Ichigo introduced, indicating the shorter of the two, a young-looking Soul Reaper with spiky white hair and piercing turquoise eyes. And Lieutenant Shuhei Hisejai of Squad 9. The taller Soul Reaper, with dark spiky hair and a 69 tattoo on his face, acknowledged Ben with a slight nod. Head Captain Kairaku has issued a direct order, Hitsugaya stated, his youthful appearance belied by his authoritative tone. Ben Tennyson is to be brought to Soul Society immediately. For what purpose? Urahara asked pleasantly, though Ben detected an edge to his voice. That's classified, Hisejai replied. Meaning Mayuri's waiting with dissection tools, Ichigo scoffed. Hitsugaya's eye twitched in annoyance. The situation has escalated beyond mere curiosity about an interdimensional visitor. There have been multiple breaches between Hueco Mundo and the world of the living, all featuring modified hollows with abilities similar to Tennyson's transformations. We know, Ben said. We fought them. And you didn't think to report this to Soul Society? Hisagi questioned. We did report it, Rukia countered. Through Lieutenant Matsumoto. Her report mentioned one incident, Hitsugaya clarified. There have been 3 more since then, in different locations. The modified hollows are getting stronger and more organized. That was news to Ben. Different locations? You mean outside Karakura town? Hisagi nodded grimly. Tokyo, Osaka, even as far as Hokkaido. All targeting spiritually significant locations. Like they're searching for something, Urahara mused. Or someone is using them to test defenses, Hitsugaya suggested, his gaze shifting to Ben. Which is why Soul Society needs to understand the full capabilities of your device and how it's affecting our world. Ben crossed his arms. I get your concern, but I'm not exactly thrilled about being a research subject for someone who, by all accounts, doesn't care much about the well-being of his test subjects. Captain Kuratsuchi's methods are unconventional, Hitsugaya acknowledged with a slight grimace, but his findings are essential to Soul Society's security. There has to be a compromise, Rukia insisted. Ben's been working with us willingly. He's helped fight hollows and has been transparent about his situation. Hitsugaya considered this, then made a decision. Very well. I'm authorized to offer an alternative. Ben Tennyson will come to Soul Society, but not to the 12th Division. Instead, he'll be brought directly to the head captain for questioning, with representatives from other divisions present to ensure fair treatment. And after questioning? Urahara pressed. That will depend on the head captain's assessment, Hitsugaya replied evenly. Ben glanced at Ichigo and Rukia, who both gave subtle nods. This was probably the best offer they'd get. He turned back to Hitsugaya. I'll come with you on 2 conditions, Ben said firmly. First, Ichigo comes with me as my, what do you call it? Advocate? Witness, Rukia supplied. Right, witness. Second, I need a guarantee I'll be returned here afterward. Urahara's working on a way to get me home, and I can't afford delays. Hitsugaya and Hisagi exchanged glances. The head captain authorized me to accept reasonable conditions, Hitsugaya finally said. Those terms are acceptable. When do we leave? Ben asked. Immediately, Hisagi answered. The situation with these modified hollows is escalating by the hour. Urahara stepped forward. Before you go, I should apply a spiritual stabilizer to the Omnitrix. It will prevent any unexpected reactions in Soul Society's highly charged atmosphere. Hitsugaya nodded his permission, and Urahara approached Ben with what looked like a thin bracelet of silvery material. This will regulate the spiritual energy flow between the Omnitrix and your surroundings, he explained quietly as he attached it to Ben's wrist, just below the watch. Then, in an even lower voice only Ben could hear, he added, it also contains a tracking device and emergency beacon. If anything goes wrong, activate it by tapping 3 times quickly. Ben gave an almost imperceptible nod of understanding as Urahara stepped back. All set, the shopkeeper announced cheerfully. Ben Tennyson is ready for his Soul Society adventure. This isn't a field trip, Hitsugaya said dryly. Everything's a field trip with the right attitude. Urahara replied, unfazed. Ichigo approached Ben while the others prepared the Senkamen. Stay close to me in Soul Society. It's complicated there. Complicated how? Ben asked. Imagine a 1,000-year-old supernatural bureaucracy with samurai powers and inflexible traditions, Ichigo explained. Now imagine I've managed to piss off about half of them at some point. So we're going to be super popular, got it, Ben said with a smirk. The Senkamen materialized, a traditional Japanese door appearing in the middle of the shop, sliding open to reveal a bright passageway. Here we go, Ben murmured, checking that the Omnitrix was ready. Another dimension inside a dimension. What could go wrong? Soul Society was not what Ben had expected. The central area, Siriidii, resembled feudal Japan, with white buildings and traditional architecture. But the spiritual energy permeating everything created an almost tangible atmosphere, making the air itself feel heavier, more significant somehow. "This place is intense," Ben commented as they walked through wide streets toward a massive central building. Soul Reapers they passed stopped to stare at the unusual procession, particularly at Ben's distinctly modern clothing and the strange device on his wrist. "Soul Society exists in a state of spiritual saturation," Rukia explained. "What you're feeling is the concentrated ratio that forms everything here." "Is it affecting the Omnitrix?" Ichigo asked quietly. Ben glanced at his watch. The usual green glow seemed steadier, more vibrant. "I think it's actually stabilizing it. Like it's found an environment it resonates with." "Fascinating," Hisagi commented, apparently having overheard. "Captain Kuratsuchi would certainly, not happening," Ichigo cut him off. They arrived at a large meeting hall where several other Soul Reapers waited, including some Ben recognized from the previous encounter in Karakura town. Standing at the head of the room was an older man with long white hair tied back, wearing a pink floral kimono over his Soul Reaper uniform. Despite his relaxed appearance, the spiritual pressure emanating from him made it clear he was incredibly powerful. "Welcome to Soul Society, Ben Tennyson," the man greeted him with surprising warmth. "I am Shunsui Kairaku, head captain of the 13 court guard squads." "Thanks for having me," Ben replied, opting for politeness. Though the invitation was a bit insistent. Kairaku chuckled. "Yes, I apologize for that. These are unusual circumstances calling for direct action." He gestured to the others in the room. "You've met some of my officers already. Also joining us are Captain Byakuya Kuchiki of Squad 6 and Captain Suifeng of Squad 2. Ben nodded to each, noting the family resemblance between Rukia and the stoic, aristocratic-looking Byakuya, and the intense scrutiny from the petite but dangerous-looking Suifeng. "I understand you've had quite the adventure since arriving in our dimension," Kairaku continued amiably, as if they were having a casual conversation rather than an official interrogation. "That's one way of putting it," Ben agreed cautiously. "Perhaps you could start by explaining exactly how you came to be here, and the nature of your device." Kairaku gestured to the Omnitrix. Ben gave them the same explanation he provided to Urahara and the others, describing the fight with Rift Shifter, his dimensional displacement, and the Omnitrix's basic functions. As he spoke, he noticed a thin Soul Reaper with an artificial-looking body quietly entering the room, Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi, he presumed, with his Lieutenant Nimue following close behind. "Ah, Captain Kuratsuchi," Kairaku acknowledged. "Thank you for joining us." "I was conducting important research," Mayuri replied irritably, his golden eyes fixing on Ben with unsettling intensity. "Though I suppose examining the source of our recent anomalies takes precedence." "Captain Kuratsuchi is here in an advisory capacity only," Kairaku assured Ben, noting his discomfort. "As our foremost scientific expert, his insights are valuable, but this is not a research expedition." Mayuri's painted face twisted in disappointment, but he said nothing further. "Now then," Kairaku continued, "what can you tell us about these modified hollows that seem to be emulating your transformations?" "Not much more than you probably already know," Ben admitted. "They've somehow incorporated DNA or energy patterns from my aliens. When I connected mentally with one as Ghost Freak, I sensed they were being engineered deliberately." "By whom?" Suifeng demanded. "We believe it may be Ryusaki Kajiro," Rukia spoke up. "Former third seat of Squad 12 under Captain Urahara, presumed dead after his exile." Mayuri snorted derisively. "Kajiro? That incompetent? He couldn't even properly preserve his specimens." "You knew him?" Ben asked. "He was my predecessor in certain research domains," Mayuri replied dismissively. "Brilliant in theory but lacking commitment to true scientific advancement." "By which he means Kajiro occasionally showed ethical restraint," Ichigo muttered under his breath. Kairaku cleared his throat. If Kajiro is indeed alive and conducting experiments combining hollow evolution with alien abilities from another dimension, the threat is significant. But we need proof before committing resources. I believe I can provide that proof, came a new voice from the doorway. Yoruchi strode in confidently, ignoring the surprised looks from several captains. My reconnaissance in Hueco Mundo has confirmed Kajiro's survival and his operations. I've located his main research facility and observed his experiments firsthand. She approached the center of the room, producing a small device that projected images of a complex built into the side of a massive quartz formation in Hueco Mundo's endless desert. More images showed hollows being modified in strange tanks, and a central chamber housing what appeared to be a smaller version of the dimensional viewer Ben had seen in Urahara's lab. He's not just experimenting with hollows, Yoruchi explained grimly. He's attempting to create stable pathways to other dimensions, including Ben's. The modified hollows are test subjects, sent to gather data on dimensional boundaries. That explains the attacks in different locations, Hitsugaya realized. He's probing for weak points between worlds. Precisely, Yoruchi confirmed. And he's accelerating his timeline. Based on what I observed, he's preparing for a major operation within the next 24 hours. Kairaku's relaxed demeanor shifted subtly to something more serious. Captain Suifeng, prepare a strike team. Captain Hitsugaya, coordinate with Karakura Town's defenses in case more modified hollows appear. What about me? Ben asked. This Kajiro guy is using my transformations somehow. I should be part of stopping him. Out of the question, Byakuya spoke for the first time, his voice cold and authoritative. You are an unknown variable from another dimension. This is Soul Society's responsibility. With all due respect, Captain Kuchiki, Ichigo countered, Ben's been fighting these things since he got here. His knowledge of the alien abilities Kajiro is using could be crucial. I agree with Kurosaki, Yoruchi added. Kajiro's facility has defenses specifically calibrated to Soul Reaper spiritual signatures. Someone with different powers might bypass them more easily. Kairaku considered this, stroking his chin thoughtfully. A valid point. Very well, Ben Tennyson may join the operation, under supervision. I volunteer, Ichigo immediately said. Naturally, Byakuya remarked dryly. I'll go as well, Rukia added firmly. And me, Renji spoke up from where he'd been standing quietly. Kairaku nodded. Captain Suifeng will lead the main strike force. Ichigo Kurosaki, Rukia Kuchiki, and Renji Aburai will form a smaller infiltration team with Ben Tennyson, focusing on Kajiro himself while our forces engage his defenses. When do we leave? Ben asked. Immediately, Yoruchi answered. The longer we wait, the more prepared Kajiro becomes. One moment, Mayuri interrupted, approaching Ben with an unsettling smile. Before you depart on this dangerous mission, perhaps I could take a small sample from your device. Purely to assist in countering Kajiro's research, of course. Not a chance, Ben replied flatly. Just a tiny scraping, Mayuri persisted. You wouldn't even notice, Captain Kuratsuchi, Kairaku intervened, his tone maintaining its pleasantness but carrying unmistakable authority. Our guest has declined. Please respect his wishes. Mayuri's face contorted in irritation, but he backed away. Fine. When Kajiro's abominations overrun Soul Society, remember who offered to help. I'll make a note of it, Kairaku replied with a slight smile. He turned to the assembled group. You have your assignments. Prepare for immediate departure to Hueco Mundo. As the meeting dispersed, Ben found himself walking alongside Ichigo and Rukia toward the Senkamen that would take them back to Urahara's shop to prepare. Soul Society politics are intense, Ben commented. Is it always like this? This was actually pretty cordial, Rukia replied with a small smile. No one drew their sword even once. Low bar, Ben muttered. You handled yourself well, Ichigo noted. Standing up to Mayuri isn't easy, even for captains. He gives me the creeps, Ben admitted. But I've dealt with plenty of mad scientists trying to get their hands on the Omnitrix before. Well, now we've got a different mad scientist to deal with, Ichigo said grimly. And something tells me Kajiro isn't going to go down without a fight. Good thing fighting is what we do best, Ben replied, checking the Omnitrix. The device hummed with energy, seemingly eager for action. Let's end this so I can finally go home. The vastness of Hueco Mundo stretched endlessly before them, a desert of white sand under an eternal night sky. Ben, transformed as Big Chill to conserve his energy, floated alongside Ichigo, Rukia, and Renji as they made their way across the barren landscape. This place feels empty, Ben observed, his ghostly voice carrying in the still air. But not really empty at the same time. Hueco Mundo exists in a state of spiritual hunger, Rukia explained. The emptiness you feel is intentional, it's the essence of hollow existence, always craving to be filled. Cheerful, Ben remarked. They traveled in silence for a while, following Yoruchi who scouted ahead in cat form. Soul Society's main force, led by Suifeng, had taken a different route to approach Kajiro's facility from the opposite direction. There, Yoruchi called back, perched atop a dune. Just beyond that quartz forest. In the distance, Ben could see massive crystalline trees rising from the sand like ancient sentinels. Beyond them, built into a cliff face, was a structure that looked jarringly out of place in the primitive landscape, a complex of metal and stone with pulsing energy conduits running across its surface. Kajiro's upgraded since his Soul Society days, Renji observed. He's had decades to prepare, Rukia replied. And Hueco Mundo has resources we don't fully understand. Yoruchi transformed back to her human form, thankfully clothed this time, Ben noted with relief. The main entrance is heavily guarded by modified hollows. Our best approach is through a maintenance passage I discovered during reconnaissance. She led them around the perimeter of the quartz forest, staying low to avoid detection. As they got closer, Ben could see hollows patrolling the facility, but these weren't like any he'd encountered before. Some had crystalline growths like Diamond Head, others moved with XLR-8 speed, and one massive guardian had arms reminiscent of 4 arms' massive limbs. He's really gone all in on the alien hollow hybrid thing, Ben whispered. Your transformations offer abilities hollows don't naturally develop, Yoruchi explained quietly. It's the perfect complement to their existing powers. They reached a small opening in the cliff face, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Yoruchi led them through a narrow passage that sloped downward into the earth. This connects to the lower levels of Kajiro's facility, she explained. It's less guarded because the spiritual pressure down here interferes with most sensing abilities. What about the Omnitrix? Ichigo asked. Will it still work? Ben considered this, feeling the watch's energy as Big Chill. It seems stable. Maybe even stronger in this environment. They emerged into a dimly lit corridor constructed of white stone with veins of black running through it. The air hummed with energy, and Ben could feel the Omnitrix responding to something, a familiar frequency that tickled at his senses. This way, Yoruchi directed, pointing down the corridor. The central laboratory should be 2 levels up. That's where Kajiro conducts his primary experiments. They moved cautiously through the facility, occasionally ducking into side rooms to avoid patrols of modified hollows. In one laboratory, they discovered tanks filled with viscous fluid, each containing a partially formed hollow showing signs of alien DNA integration. He's mass-producing them, Renji observed grimly. Not just producing, evolving them, Rukia added, examining a nearby console. Each generation incorporates more stable alien attributes. Ben approached one of the tanks, studying the creature suspended within. It had a hollow's mask and hull, but its body structure was unmistakably similar to Humongousaur's. This is bad, he murmured. If these things get loose with stable transformative abilities. A sudden alarm blared through the facility, red lights flashing in the corridor. Seems Suifeng's team has engaged the outer defenses, Yoruchi noted. That's our cue to move faster. They hurried through the corridors, no longer bothering with stealth. Most of the facility's defenders would be focused on the main Soul Society force outside, giving their infiltration team a clearer path to Kadro himself. As they climbed to the upper levels, the architecture changed subtly, becoming more refined, more intentional. The walls featured strange symbols that Ben recognized from multiple alien cultures, alongside diagrams of dimensional planes intersecting. He's been studying more than just my transformations, Ben realized. He's mapping entire dimensions. There, Ichigo pointed to a massive set of doors at the end of a wide hallway. That has to be the main lab. As they approached, the doors slid open on their own, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. The walls were covered in monitors displaying data streams and dimensional coordinates. Massive energy conduits ran along the ceiling, all feeding into a central platform where a complex machine hummed with power. Standing at a control panel, his back to them, was a figure in a white lab coat. He turned slowly as they entered, revealing a gaunt face with calculating eyes and a serene smile. "Welcome," he greeted them as if they were expected guests rather than intruders. "I was wondering when Soul Society would finally discover my little operation. And you've brought my star specimen with you. How thoughtful." Ryusaki Kajiro, Yoruchi stated coldly. "You're supposed to be dead. Death is such a limiting concept, don't you think?" Kajiro replied pleasantly. "I prefer to think of my exile as a rebirth, an opportunity to pursue my research without Soul Society's archaic restrictions." His gaze shifted to Ben, who had reverted to human form to conserve the Omnitrix's charge. "And you must be Ben Tennyson. Your arrival in our dimension was the catalyst I've been waiting for. The missing piece in my grand design. Whatever you're planning stops now," Ichigo declared, drawing his massive sword. "Your modified hollows have been attacking innocent people." "Necessary field tests," Kajiro dismissed with a wave. "One cannot perfect interdimensional integration without practical data." "Integration?" Ben asked, something about Kajiro's terminology setting off warning bells. "Of course." Kajiro's eyes lit up with fanatic enthusiasm. "For too long, Soul Society has stagnated in isolation, ignoring the vast multiverse beyond our borders. I intend to change that by bringing the power of multiple dimensions into our own." He gestured to the machine behind him. "This dimensional convergence engine is the culmination of decades of research. When fully activated, it will create permanent pathways between our dimension and others, allowing a free flow of energy, power, and evolution." "You're insane," Rukia stated flatly. "Tearing holes between dimensions would destabilize the entire cosmos." "A small price for evolution," Kajiro replied, unperturbed. "And with the data I've collected from your Omnitrix, Ben Tennyson, I've finally solved the stability problem." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. "What data?" "I never gave you anything." Kajiro laughed. "My dear boy, you've been broadcasting dimensional frequencies since the moment you arrived. Every transformation, every pulse of that remarkable device, all of it has been feeding my sensors, providing the exact calibrations I needed." He spread his arms wide. "Your presence here was no accident. The distortion that brought you to our world. I created it." "You what?" Ben's shock quickly turned to anger. "You're the reason I'm stranded here." "I merely created a dimensional beacon," Kajiro clarified. "Something in your world responded, this rift shifter, you mentioned, perhaps. A convenient interdimensional entity that delivered exactly what I needed." "You son of a," Ben started forward, but Ichigo put a restraining hand on his shoulder. "He's baiting you," Ichigo warned quietly. "Stay focused." Kajiro turned back to his control panel, typing rapidly. "In any case, your timely arrival has accelerated my timeline considerably. The convergence engine is ready for its first full-scale test." The machine behind him pulsed with energy, the central platform beginning to glow. "We need to shut that thing down," Renji said, readying his sword. before he tears a hole in reality. By all means, try, Kajiro invited, stepping aside with a mocking bow. But I should warn you, the engine is protected by defenses derived from your Omnitrix, Ben Tennyson. A most versatile source of security measures. As if on cue, the platform erupted with energy, and 4 figures materialized, hollows, but unlike any they'd seen before. Each clearly emulated one of Ben's transformations, a crystalline one like Diamond Head, a fiery one resembling Heat Blast, a speedster similar to XLR-8, and a massive brute that could only be inspired by Humongosaur. My amalgams, Kajiro introduced them proudly. The perfect fusion of hollow spiritual essence and alien genetic potential. They've been quite eager to meet their inspiration. The 4 hollow alien hybrids advanced menacingly, their masks featuring elements of both hollow and the aliens they emulated. I'll handle Kajiro, Ben decided, activating the Omnitrix. You guys take care of his pets. Divide and conquer. How predictable, Kajiro sighed theatrically. But while your friends are busy with my amalgams. He reached into his lab coat, withdrawing what looked like a modified Soul Reaper combat pass. Let me show you what else I've learned from studying your transformations. He pressed the device against his chest, and his body erupted with energy, a swirling mixture of spiritual pressure and something that made the Omnitrix on Ben's wrist react violently. When the light faded, Kajiro stood transformed. His body had grown taller, covered in a chitinous exoskeleton reminiscent of multiple alien species fused together. Parts of him glowed with spiritual energy, while other sections featured technology integrated directly into his flesh. What the hell? Ichigo breathed. Impressive, isn't it? Kajiro's voice had gained a harmonic quality, reverberating from multiple points in his transformed body. I call it evolutionary integration. The perfect fusion of spiritual power and interdimensional genetics. Guys, Ben called to the others, not taking his eyes off the transformed scientist, stick to the plan. I'll handle him. Be careful, Rukia warned. His spiritual pressure is unlike anything I've felt before. Ben nodded grimly, cycling through the Omnitrix's options. This wasn't a time for restraint, he needed something powerful enough to match Kajiro's hybrid form. Let's see how your knockoff transformation handles the real thing, Ben declared, slamming down the Omnitrix dial. Way big. The massive Tucuster form materialized, nearly filling the high ceiling of the laboratory. Unlike previous transformations, this one incorporated spiritual energy seamlessly from the start, blue patterns of Ryatsu flowing through his white and red body in controlled, deliberate pathways. Kajiro looked up at the towering form with undisguised delight. Magnificent. The spiritual adaptation is even more perfect than my sensors indicated. Around them, the battle had erupted between the Soul Reapers and Kajiro's amalgams. Ichigo engaged the Humongosaur hybrid, his massive sword clashing against the creature's armored fists. Rukia's ice abilities controlled the fiery Heat Blast copy, while Renji's extending blade tried to pin down the XLR-8 variant. Yoruchi, moving with incredible speed, traded blows with the Diamond Head creature, her spiritual enhanced strikes cracking its crystalline surface. Ben focused on Kajiro, bringing one massive fist down toward the scientist. To his shock, Kajiro caught the blow with his transformed arms, the impact creating a shockwave that shattered nearby equipment. Strength alone won't defeat me, Ben Tennyson, Kajiro taunted. I've integrated the defensive capabilities of multiple species. He pushed back with surprising force, actually making Way Big stumble. Ben recovered quickly, firing a cosmic ray from his crossed arms. Kajiro raised a barrier, part spiritual Kido, part alien technology, that deflected the beam into the ceiling, sending debris crashing down. My turn, Kajiro announced, his body pulsing with energy. His right arm morphed, extending into a cannon-like appendage that gathered both spiritual energy and what appeared to be cosmic power similar to Way Big's own attacks. The blast that erupted from it struck Ben directly in the chest, powerful enough to knock even his massive form backward into the laboratory wall. Warning systems in the facility blared as structural integrity was compromised. "Careful, Tennyson," Renji called out while dodging his opponent's attacks. "This whole place might come down on us." Ben realized he needed a different approach. Wei Big's power was too destructive in these confines, and Kajiro had clearly prepared for this confrontation. Time for a change in tactics, Ben decided, slapping the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Ghost Freak. His massive form shrank and transformed into the ghostly ectoneurite, enhanced as before with spiritual energy that made the normally ethereal alien more substantial, more connected to this dimension. The spiritual enhancements to Ghost Freak felt particularly natural, as if this form was meant to interact with the spiritual world. Fascinating adaptation. Kajiro observed, his hybrid form shifting in response. Let's see how it handles this. His body released a pulse of energy specifically calibrated to affect spiritual entities. Ben felt it pass through him, momentarily disrupting his intangibility. You've studied my transformations too well, Ben acknowledged, circling Kajiro warily. Knowledge is power, my young friend, Kajiro replied. And I've had ample time to analyze your every move since your arrival. Ben needed to try something Kajiro hadn't seen yet, or at least, hadn't had time to fully analyze. He accessed the Omnitrix symbol again. Feedback. The conductoid form materialized, its antenna and plugs already crackling with both electricity and spiritual energy. The Ryatsu flowed through feedback's energy manipulation capabilities, creating an amplification effect Ben could feel immediately. Let's see how your systems handle a power surge. Ben extended his plugs toward the nearest energy conduit, connecting directly to the facility's power system. Electricity and spiritual energy flowed into him, his body converting and amplifying it before channeling it toward Kajiro in a concentrated blast. The scientist raised his defenses again, but this time the energy broke through, striking him directly and sending him crashing into his precious convergence engine. The machine sparked dangerously, displays flickering. No! Kajiro cried out, scrambling to check the damage. You fool! The dimensional calibrations are destabilizing. The engine began to pulse erratically, the platform at its center opening multiple small rifts that flashed with images of different dimensions. Meanwhile, the battles around them were reaching their conclusion. Ichigo had finally overpowered the Humongousaur amalgam, cleaving through its mask with a decisive strike. Rukia had completely frozen her fiery opponent, while Renji had managed to ensnare and decapitate the speedster. Yoruchi delivered a final spiritual enhanced kick that shattered the diamond-head creature's core. Ben! Ichigo called out, rejoining the main battle. The engine is overloading. I know. Ben replied, maintaining his feedback form and moving closer to the malfunctioning machine. I think I can absorb the excess energy before it tears this place apart. You'll do no such thing. Kajiro snarled, his hybrid form becoming less stable, parts of it fluctuating between different alien aspects. The convergence will proceed as planned. He lunged at Ben, but Ichigo intercepted him, Zangetsu clashing against Kajiro's transformed limbs. Go! Ichigo shouted to Ben. We'll handle him. Ben connected his plugs to the engine, immediately feeling an overwhelming surge of dimensional energy. It was like nothing he'd absorbed before, raw power from multiple realities flowing through him simultaneously. The Omnitrix on his chest pulsed rapidly, struggling to regulate the influx. There's too much. Ben warned, his feedback form beginning to glow with excessive energy. I can't contain it all. You need to redirect it. Rukia called out, joining them after defeating her opponent. Like a Keto practitioner channels spiritual energy. Ben concentrated, trying to apply what he'd learned about spiritual energy control over the past week. The power flowing through him was chaotic, resisting his attempts to direct it. Kajiro, seeing what Ben was attempting, fought with renewed desperation. No. The convergence must happen. Soul Society must evolve or die. The only one dying today is you if you don't stand down. Renji threatened, his extended blade joining Ichigo's assault. Despite being outnumbered, Kajiro's hybrid form proved remarkably resilient. He fought with the combined abilities of multiple alien species and spiritual techniques, holding his own against 3 experienced Soul Reapers. Ben, meanwhile, struggled with the dimensional energy. The Omnitrix was helping stabilize the flow, but he needed somewhere to direct it. The power was too great to simply disperse safely. Then he noticed something on the engine's control panel, coordinates, familiar ones. His home dimension. Guys, he called out. I think I can use this energy to create a stable pathway home. Do it. Yoruichi encouraged, landing beside him after avoiding one of Kajiro's attacks. We'll keep him busy. Ben focused the dimensional energy flowing through Feedback's body, channeling it toward the specific frequency of his home universe. The Omnitrix, sensing his intent, adjusted its own output to harmonize with the flow. A new portal began to form on the platform, not the chaotic rifts from the malfunctioning engine, but a stable, focused doorway. Through it, Ben could see Bellwood, the same park he'd glimpsed in Urahara's viewer, but clearer, more defined. No! Kajiro roared, breaking away from his opponents and charging toward Ben. You're ruining everything. Actually, Ben countered, disconnecting from the engine now that the portal was stabilizing. I'm fixing what you broke, the barrier between dimensions. He changed tactics, switching forms with a quick tap on the Omnitrix. Atomix. The powerful nuclear alien materialized, its natural energy generation capabilities enhanced by the spiritual adaptations. Green nuclear energy swirled with blue spiritual power as Ben charged his attack. HMENA HMENA HMENA. The familiar chant built power in Atomix's hands, forming a sphere of devastating energy. Nuclear Spirit Blast. The attack struck Kajiro directly, overloading his hybrid form. The scientist screamed as his transformation began to break down, the disparate elements of his fusion fighting against each other. You don't understand. Kajiro cried out, his body fluctuating wildly. I was trying to save Soul Society. To prepare us for what's coming. If that were true, Ichigo countered, you wouldn't have sent hollows to attack innocent people. Sacrifices for the greater good. Kajiro insisted, his voice distorting as his transformation failed. The barriers between dimensions are weakening naturally. I was just accelerating the inevitable. Ben hesitated, something in Kajiro's desperate words ringing with genuine belief. What do you mean, weakening naturally? Other universes are pressing against our own, Kajiro explained, struggling to maintain cohesion. I detected the first dimensional thinning 50 years ago. It's been accelerating ever since. Without controlled integration, the eventual collision will be catastrophic. Even if that's true, Rukia said firmly, your methods are wrong. Soul Society can prepare without corrupting hollows or tearing reality apart. The facility began to shake violently around them, the engine's instability spreading to the structural supports. We need to leave, Yoruichi warned. This entire complex is going to collapse. Ben looked at the portal he'd created, his way home, stable but not necessarily permanent. Then at his allies, who were preparing to evacuate. What about him? Ben nodded toward Kajiro, whose hybrid form had almost completely destabilized, leaving him weakened but still dangerous. Soul Society will deal with him, Renji said firmly. Once we get out of this death trap. Kajiro laughed bitterly. Soul Society will learn nothing from me. They'll lock away my research, return to their complacency, and remain unprepared for what's coming. He staggered toward the engine's controls. If I can't complete my work, then at least I'll leave them a warning they can't ignore. Before anyone could stop him, Kajiro slammed his fist down on a large red control, triggering a final sequence in the engine. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Self-destruct initiated, an automated voice announced. Dimensional containment failing. Catastrophic breach imminent. You madman! Renji shouted. We need to go, now. Yoruchi urged, already moving toward the exit. Ben looked at the portal home, then at the destabilizing engine. If it exploded with all this dimensional energy, the damage could spread far beyond this facility. You guys go, he decided. I need to contain this explosion. Are you insane? Ichigo demanded. Even your transformations can't survive that. No, but I can absorb and redirect the energy, Ben explained. Channel it into the space between dimensions where it can dissipate harmlessly. That's suicide, Rukia protested. Trust me, Ben replied with more confidence than he felt. I've done crazier things. The facility shook more violently, sections of the ceiling collapsing around them. There's no time to argue, Yoruchi stated. Everyone out, now. Ben, Ichigo hesitated, clearly torn. Go. Ben insisted. I'll be right behind you, I promise. The Soul Reapers reluctantly retreated, Renji dragging the weakened Kajiro with them. Only Ichigo remained for a moment longer. Don't be a hero, he told Ben with grim irony. Too late for that, Ben replied with a half-smile. It's kind of my thing. Ichigo nodded once, understanding in his eyes, before Flash stepping away to join the others. Alone with the destabilizing engine, Ben took a deep breath and activated the Omnitrix one more time. Alien X. The Celestialsapian form materialized, cosmic energy swirling through its starry body. Unlike his previous transformations, Alien X's natural connection to cosmic forces seemed to resonate perfectly with the spiritual energy of this dimension, creating not just an enhancement but a harmonious synthesis. Bellicus, Serena, Ben addressed the personalities within Alien X, we need to contain this dimensional explosion. For once, the argumentative voices within the Celestialsapian responded immediately, perhaps influenced by the spiritual realm's emphasis on balance and harmony. Agreed, they spoke in unison. The boundaries between dimensions must be maintained. Ben raised Alien X's arms, cosmic power flowing outward to surround the engine. As the machine reached critical overload, he created a dimensional pocket around it, a space outside normal reality where the explosion could occur without damaging the surrounding universe. The engine detonated in a spectacular release of dimensional energy, all of it contained within Alien X's cosmic bubble. Ben channeled the power, dispersing it safely into the void between dimensions. What he didn't anticipate was how the explosion would interact with the portal home he'd created earlier. As the dimensional energies dissipated, they created a powerful suction effect, pulling the portal, and Ben, toward the void. Ben found himself caught between dimensions, Alien X's form struggling to maintain stability as conflicting cosmic forces pulled at him from all directions. He could see his home universe through the wavering portal, and behind him, the collapsing facility in Hueco Mundo. With a final surge of Celestialsapian power, Ben made his choice. He directed the remaining energy to stabilize the portal home, even as it pulled him inexorably toward it. Goodbye, Soul Society, he thought as Alien X's form was drawn through the dimensional doorway. It's been educational. The portal collapsed behind him, the connection between dimensions severing as Ben tumbled through the final barrier toward home. Ben. Ben. Can you hear me? The familiar voice penetrated the fog in Ben's mind. He opened his eyes slowly, wincing at the brightness of a blue sky above him. A red-haired figure leaned over him, concern etched on her face. Gwen, he croaked, his throat dry. He's awake. Gwen called out, relief evident in her voice. Kevin, he's awake. Ben tried to sit up, his entire body aching like he'd been hit by a truck. Kevin appeared beside Gwen, offering a hand to help him up. Took you long enough, Tennyson, Kevin remarked, though Ben could hear the genuine relief beneath the casual tone. We've been searching for you for 3 days. 3 days? Ben repeated, the timeline confirming what Urahara had theorized about temporal differences between dimensions. It felt like weeks. What happened? Gwen asked. 1 minute you were fighting that rift shifter alien, then you just vanished. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix on his wrist. It appeared normal again, the standard green glow present without any of the spiritual energy patterns he'd grown accustomed to seeing. But when he focused, he could still feel something different about it, a subtle resonance that hadn't been there before. "It's a long story," he said finally. "Involving soul reapers, spiritual energy, and a mad scientist obsessed with dimensional evolution." Kevin and Gwen exchanged confused glances. "You hit your head when you came back, didn't you?" Kevin suggested. Ben laughed, a mixture of exhaustion and genuine amusement. "Trust me, it all makes perfect sense when you've spent time in a dimension where people fight soul-eating monsters with magic swords." He struggled to his feet, looking around the familiar park in Bellwood. Everything was exactly as he remembered it, and yet somehow different too, as if seeing his home through new eyes. "Are you okay?" Gwen asked, concern returning to her voice. "You seem different." "I am different," Ben acknowledged quietly. "Let's just say I got some interesting upgrades while I was away." He glanced at the Omnitrix again, wondering if its spiritual adaptations had survived the journey home, or if they would only manifest when facing spiritual entities. Either way, he knew his experience in the Bleach universe had changed both him and the Omnitrix permanently. "So," Kevin said, breaking the contemplative silence, "are you going to tell us this long story or what? Because Grandpa Max has been freaking out, and we need something good to tell him." Ben smiled, feeling the weight of his adventure settling into perspective. "Yeah, I'll tell you everything. But first, can we get something to eat? Interdimensional travel really works up an appetite." As they walked toward Kevin's car, Ben took one last look at the sky, wondering if somewhere across the dimensional barrier, Ichigo and the others were still fighting their battles, still protecting their world from hollows and whatever other threats emerged. "Thank you," he whispered to the friends he'd left behind. "For everything." For just a moment, Ben thought he felt a familiar spiritual pressure, a brief resonance across dimensions, like a farewell from another world. Then it was gone, leaving only the Omnitrix's subtle hum and the memories of his journey among spirits. Ben smiled and turned away, ready to face whatever adventures awaited him in his own dimension, now with a little spiritual enhancement to help along the way. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.